All right, folks, welcome inside. Oh, God, it's Monday. What are the odds? I didn't see Barnes in there, so like I got it in my head a little bit. So this time it wasn't me. This time my son came in the office and did, I don't know, like father, like son. What can I tell you? Got tangled up, ripped it up. I couldn't get a new one for today. So it's back to the Brio and the cam. All right, look, it is October 14th. All right. I'm sure Barnes is going to agree when he comes on. I'm going to show you guys some polling data from Michigan, some basically finished, just going to clean it up, make it look pretty, polling data from Michigan. And at this point, if I was being cautious last week, this is why I made you guys wait. And I knew everybody was like, hey, where's the polls? Where's Pennsylvania? Where's Michigan? We're going to poll Pennsylvania, by the way, back to back, which is great. Look, that's just the kind of guy I am. I would rather eat the cost. A lot of the problems with the polling industry is due to cost. And I would rather eat the cost of something that needs to be done if I feel that it needs to be done for me to be more accurate. Okay. So I'm not going to stop in the middle of, oh, well, there's the budget. It's done. And I think I see something, but I don't know. So I'm going to wait to find out. That's not me, folks. That's not me. And if you've been around since like 2020, maybe even before 2020, you know that. I will make you wait if I think I see something and it matters. And it matters a lot. All right. So, look, I normally don't play clips of myself, but I think that I'm going to do that because I had brought up something on Friday that I think is important. All right. And I was focusing on the state of Pennsylvania at the time, but things can change. And over the course of a weekend, something can happen. Now, it doesn't change the overall commentary of what I was saying, the validity of the overall commentary of what I was saying. But the numbers changed, I should say. The margin itself changed. So while we wait for Barnes, I'm going to play something. I went on Solomon Reports on Friday. And I love talking to John and Amanda. They're both very, very, they get like right to the heart of what's important when it comes to what their viewers want to know. That's true of like the stories they cover, but then also when they have me on to do these polling segments, like what's going on in the polls this week, they have looked at everything I've said over the last week or so. And they say, you know what? What did you mean here? And they always pluck the right stuff. And when we got into doing the public polling project, I said, I want a final for everything we do. So I'm not going to overextend like we did in 22, because that leaves you open to criticism. Someone grabs a poll from like August and they're like, it was, Walker +1. Okay. Well, he lost by 1. That's still a decent poll. Maybe. Well, actually, in Georgia, that was our final. That was a legit final. Walker +1. But like some other ones, like Nevada, et cetera, et cetera. So I want finals for everything. And I said the Rust Belt, period. Pennsylvania specifically. But when I went to go do Pennsylvania, I thought early in the year, polling, maybe it doesn't work this way in the vote, but in the polling, to me, it looked like Michigan was more favorable to Trump than it had been compared to the other states in the prior cycles. And I saw that briefly in 2016 as well, even though the finals, when everything was tracked, that was not the case. And you're talking about 1/10 of a percentage point. Both finals were Trump +1. But if you looked in Michigan, Michigan looked better for a week or 2 weeks before the election. Then it closed. Hillary lost the older white super senior vote, which is important. Hang on to what I'm saying right now, because I'm telling you, I'm going to show you right now why these polls are wrong with seniors. I'm going to show you demographics. I see Robert's here, though, so let me shut up. Let me play this clip real quick. I never play clips of myself, but I'm going to play it on purpose because I'm going to show, actually never say never. I played a clip of Barnes and I back like 6 months before the primary started to like develop, saying exactly how this was going to develop. All right. So I did do that. That's not true. That's not true. All right. I take it back. All right. A little bit of hubris there, Robert. All right. Let me play this and I'm going to get to it. I'm going to ask Robert his opinion about it as well. And then I'm going to make a statement that I normally don't make this far out, but I'm going to do it. There are groups in the Midwest, folks, that really matter, and Catholics are one of them. They're still a very dominant voting bloc that have a big impact. And Joe Biden won them by low single digits in 2020. They have now shifted back to Trump, and we can see it in Michigan. We can see it in Pennsylvania. And we even look at ethnicities. So when we're looking at ethnic Catholics like Italians and Germans, these groups are going to decide who wins the Keystone State. It's a very big voting bloc. It's very important. He won them against Hillary Clinton by about a few points less than he's winning them against Kamala Harris right now. So just to give you guys an idea of where we are in margins, that's it. That's looking like 2 points in Pennsylvania. That's what that comes down to. That's what that translates into. And it's very difficult for her to win the popular vote, let alone the Midwest, if she can't make up ground there. All right, there it is. Nice little image of me with my eyes closed. All right, with that, let me bring on Robert. Hey, brother, how's it going this week for you, man? Busy as all hell like me or what? Jeez.
Yeah. Well, we're 3 weeks out, right?
3 weeks to almost the day. And this is why, I'm ready to say this now. I'm going to show you something in a second here. I'm going to show everybody something in a second here. It's Michigan. I was actually going to release Pennsylvania first, but I got to be careful here because I'm not like other pollsters and I don't like to double dip. And somebody else had a poll that I'm doing in Pennsylvania. So we were tracking it for the public polling project. And I said, you know what? Let me do his first. We'll overlap 2 days. And then I'll be able to release Pennsylvania like Wednesday. Maybe I'll do it sooner, but I'm not like you, Gov. I'm not double dipping, bro. I'm not doing that bullshit. So I'm going to give them that, and everyone's going to see it anyway. It's going to be public. And then I also too wanted more phone interviews. Like sometimes clients don't want to do things. Like I saw something last week. I knew I saw it, and I brought up the Catholic vote in that specific clip. I am now ready to say, bro, that she is in deep trouble. All right, like deep, deep trouble. Here is Michigan. It's not fully even done, being weighted yet, but so far, almost tiny geographic changes, folks. All right, I'm talking about tiny nested changes, such as, okay, education by race and area. All right, so like these make tiny, tiny tweaks. They don't change the overall trajectory of the race, okay? And this is Michigan, where Robert and I, this feels like I'm feeling a little 2016 here. Like Michigan for a second in 2016 looked like it was more pro-Trump than Pennsylvania before they both kind of broke and settled. And then Pennsylvania was obviously more Trumpy than Michigan. But I never saw this in Michigan. And in fact, Hillary was leading at this point in October still. In the state of Michigan, it's just that I could see it was closing and that she was having a problem with older, used to be Democratic voters who loved Obama, and they were very much undecided and they were flirting with Trump. And then at the end, the super seniors that have been voting Democrat for years broke for him and put him just over. And then the Bernie voters too were a part of that, who were like, you know what? I am going to do it. You, Hillary, like that's how it went, just for people who don't know and haven't been following me that long. This is the back end for locals people, and you, Robert, you all know, you see the full final result. All right, this is me and how we build the crosstabs. So we define the variables. Here's all the variables: education by race. All right, first of all, let me just close this crosstab real quick. All right, let's look at religion. I just had brought up, Robert, the Catholic vote. Okay. Here's Catholics. First of all, you can see Joe Biden's approval rating is suffering, all right, badly. And Whitmer's not. She's good. She's not, she's not as popular as she once was, but she's still pretty darn popular in our polling. So is Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. All right. Here's the Catholic vote. I could go back, or you could just take my word for it. And I can tell you that Joe Biden won the Catholic vote in Michigan by like a point or two in our polling. Protestants were more Trumpy. All right. Obviously. And then we have Greeks, ethnic. I can also just do religion, so we don't have all these subgroups because the sampling errors are huge for these subgroups. But let's not yet. Okay. Let's not. Here's Protestants, as you can see. Is overwhelmingly a Trumpy vote. Okay. First of all, yeah, Trump is leading by 2 points before it splits. All right. Before we push to decide. It's all right. The Catholic vote is significantly Trumpy in the initial ask. It tightens. There it is. It tightens when you lean people. But the fact of the matter is, and actually, oh my God, this is going to hurt Harris more. Never mind. Just realized by area, this is going to hurt Harris more. This will end up maybe being a Trump +3 in Michigan. That's what I'm just saying. That's what it looks like. All right.
For context, I don't think you ever had Trump ahead in Michigan.
Never. Oh my God. Are you kidding me? By this much? No. Robert, I had Trump +1 was our final in 16. Biden +2 was our final in 2020. Even when Trump won the state, it was like at the very end, he had a 0.5% lead, folks. Like it was because we give decimal points, as you can see. We have always given before the rounding. We have always done that. Why? Because elections aren't decided by whole rounded numbers. All right, that's why. I mean, it's really that simple. And for a long time, we went to 100ths. For people who are not like super in math, that's 2 decimal points. Okay, so I mean, well, seriously, people don't deal with this shit on a daily basis like we do. So now we do 10s for the sake of for the sake of making it easy. You may notice it is widely believed that Joe Biden won almost every Arab American vote, a Muslim vote in the state of Michigan. We know because we're asking people who they voted for. We got a 9% for the Muslim vote. For Donald Trump, it is now 27.7%. Holy shit.
And how many are Harris versus like third-party independent, not going to vote, etc.?
Yeah, right. Well, that's a great question because here's another thing that I think is really important. Now that we're 3 weeks out, I think we're going to get a turnout that's between 2016 and 2020. And a lot of these like so-called first-time COVID voters, they're not voting. They're not voting.
I was wondering about it. I was looking at reassessing my turnout projection because I'm thinking about bringing it down some.
Yeah, me too.
I already had it down off of 2020, but I think I'm going to bring it down a little bit more, at least by what we're seeing so far.
1%, 61%. Here's the kicker too, because it could
about 150 million rather than
about 150. It could end up
under $1.50.
Maybe a little under. It could end up a little over, and the only reason why I say that is because the new voter in 2020 looks nothing like the new voter in 22. The new voter in 2020 is like a 45-year-old guy who hasn't voted in or like a 54-year-old woman. That's another one. I'm not pulling those out of my head like my ass. That these are some of the people we've spoken to who never voted. She never voted. He hasn't voted since like I don't know, like Obama 08 or something like that. Like and the other one, the woman, she's never voted. She's in Sheboygan, right? And she's going to vote for Donald Trump. This is like catastrophic. How this broke in the last week or so is absolutely catastrophic for Kamala Harris. I mean, because why? Because while it looks close, folks, what has happened in the last 2 elections? Everybody, like I haven't. I was like pretty much on the money, right? Although I did underestimate both candidates in different states in 2020, and I overestimated some here and there, but within the sampling errors, like good polling for the year. In 2016, I understated Trump in some areas, but I generally caught the big stuff, which is that, you know what, Trump's going to win blue wall states that a Republican has not won since 1988 or 1984, if you go back to Wisconsin. So we caught that. I've never been like, so I think I want to hope and believe, Robert, I'm on the money here. Like, Trump by 1 to 3 in these states. I want to believe I'm on the money, but it isn't what it is possible looking at the rest of the polling field that we could understate him. And I'm going to show you why. Let's go to, and the Catholic vote is just disgusting. That's 5 points more than, let me just say disgusting. That's 5 points more than he beat Hillary Clinton.
And what is the Arab, share of the Arab vote is Harris getting?
64% without leaners.
So you're talking about like a 25 point decline.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Which I'm going to play a clip here in a bit from somebody else.
Good luck with, it was like, and they're going to lose Jewish votes to boot. It's like, you can't walk the line on Gaza. we're going to kind of be on this side. No, we're going to be kind of be on that side. No, we're going to kind of be on that side. There is no, I mean, it's like being part pregnant. Ain't no such thing.
Holy crap, that's funny. And there's always been this Protestant kind of left-wing Protestant vote. It's not the majority, but there's always been that in Michigan. Yeah. And you can see it. The Protestant Norwegians are skewing the Scandinavian numbers. The Catholic Norwegians are overwhelmingly for Trump. Right. So like if we just look at race, and again, I know what happened and I gotta deal with it. Let's do the grouped one first. And age is just unbelievable. That's approval. Okay. So look at the white vote. That's disgusting for her. She is about 4 points below Joe Biden with white non-college educated, 4 or 5 points, when you on net,
And she's not, I'm guessing she's not gaining much amongst the white college plus crowd.
Let me show you that, because the truth is we have Trump actually about even with her with white college voters. And that is the way. And what people will be like, that's good. That's it. That's why the poll's not right. Okay. All of the polls understate Trump's support with white voters who have a 4-year degree.
And it's because of who they're getting. They're getting the post-college group is too big a portion of that group. And the prestigious university group is too big of that group.
That's right.
They're not getting Wayne State graduate, right?
That's right. Exactly.
That's who they're, because I was fascinated in looking at voter registration data at how your middle class, 4-year educated state university kind of area, whether we're talking anywhere, whether we're talking about Virginia, talking about North Carolina, talking about New Jersey, talking about Pennsylvania, talking about Michigan, all over the place. When I was digging in the voter registration data, it was only the upper middle class that was holding or trending Democratic. Your true middle class areas, these are suburban areas. But what is, they're areas where people went to the local college. They didn't go to the prestigious school. Like, so in my hometown, Chattanooga, they went to, they went to Chattanooga State, or rather the University of Tennessee, even at Knoxville. And they definitely didn't go off to some fancy school and come back home. And so that voter is trending heavily Trumpian. And that's why I don't think there's enough votes for her to add to the upper middle class vote. I mean, how many voters were there out left that were still voting Trump that now will suddenly vote Harris that are in the post-college crowd? So if she's not adding any votes there, she's just bleeding votes.
Robert, this is the big, and I'm going to show by region too, because the big movement here is what you're talking about. Wayne, Macomb, up to Oakland. And there's a lot of white affluent voters in Oakland. Biden clobbered Trump there. I think it was 16, 18 points, something like that. And then as a Republican, you've got to win Macomb by a large enough margin where you don't wash it completely out, but it's almost a net wash. And then you use Monroe to basically make it a net wash. And then you got the margin in Detroit, in Wayne County, that's going to come out. And you need the rest of the state outside of a few pockets of blue. You're going to need the rest of the state to put you over the top when all of that is said and done. I mean, that is the simple equation for how a Republican wins the state of Michigan. And Kent County, the Danish, the Dutch, right? These like silk stocking Republicans who threw Kent County and the Grand Rapids area to Biden is a big deal. And I mean, I'll show you that in a second. But the real movement here, I got to tell you, is the southeastern part of the state with non-white voters. And of course, there's white voters that have moved. There was a working class Biden white who decided, okay, I didn't like Hillary. Now I'll go for Biden. Now I'm going to go back to Trump. There's that. That's happening. But the big movement by percentage, by net shift, is among those who are non-white and have a degree, or, so like that is like stunning to me. Now, of course, I expected the non-white, non-college to also do the same. We're getting like single digit recall numbers, but then now when you look at these numbers, look at this. I mean, I know this is a small group, so let's even just pretend and throw out the non-white college. Let's just throw it out. It's like 8% of the electorate or something, 7% of the electorate. Look at non-white, non-college. I mean, that is you look at it and you're like, oh, but Rich, it's only 27% before leaned. With leaned, it's a third. And I would caution you to go look at what it was in 2020. Okay. It was absolutely, it was a bloodbath.
Is that a combination of Black, Hispanic, and Arab?
Yes. Yes, it is. And
Right, that makes sense.
in 2020,
So
Biden won
her Wayne County
82%.
margins are not gonna be good.
Watch, you wanna see it? Okay, that's what I'm trying to say here. This is not it's not just Macomb. It's not just like because you was, "Oh, Oakland's gonna save us." Oakland is not saving you. You're gonna shit when you see these numbers, okay? And then by the way, again, just so you can see here, that's that number. It's not a super, super small subgroup. It's not huge, but it's not small. Voters of color with a college degree voted 80-20 for Biden in 2020. Voters of color with no degree voted 81-18. So for people who immediately saw that number and was like, whoa, 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 why do voters with a college degree are slightly more Trumpy? They were in Michigan. There are some subgroups in Michigan that are a little bit weird, including younger voters, certain age groups. We're going to, in middle age 30 to 39, 40 to 49, we're going to get in all of that. And then white, no college, right? Because people say, oh, that looks close. Biden was close with white non-college. He was close. And then, by the way, look at the white college. You see what I'm saying? Like when split, it looks like it's going to be split. But when you lean them and you push them, it's not. When we do the generic someone else, it is tighter. So you got it because RFK is going to be on the ballot. There are Jill Stein's going to be on the ballot. There are other people on the ballot. Cornel West, this other guy. I squished them all together and just put the someone else candidate because the margins were so small. So we just combined it. So we can move on here. But look at by region. Oh, area first. Hold on. Just by area, simple area. What's interesting is Trump has taken the suburbs by 1 point. If you look at 2020, suburbs were for Trump by 3. When leaned, he's winning by 2. Sorry. So it's like very much the same. What has changed is Trump's urban vote and Trump's rural vote. He's squeezing more blood from the stone out of the rural areas and counties of Michigan, which, by the way, only went for Trump 54-45 in 2020. And that's roughly what we had. And I remember us talking, you and I back then, about, man, he needs to squeeze out more rural vote. Basically, that's not uncommon in Michigan because of ancestral Democratic voting habits. That's not uncommon. But, if he really wants to be secure, he's got to squeeze more. And boom, look at that. 66-34. Bro, I went back and looked. Not even in 2016 did we find these numbers. It was 60-40. So this is like, come on, man. I mean, come on. I mean, how many things can you just like ignore, right? And then he's winning the suburbs by a bit. And then by that urban vote, check this out. Look at by region. So we have a little bit different than some other people. All right. In Wayne County, he's at 36% before being leaned. All right. And by the way, you're going to see Allegheny. It's going to look very similar. He's at 30, which should tell you something. He's at 36% before leaning. Then when leaned, he's at 40. Let's, again, talk about subgroup sampling errors being higher. Very good, folks. Whatever. I had him at 27% of the vote in Wayne County in 2020. 27% of the vote. All right. So this is like, again, throw it on top of the list of things like how many things can you ignore before you say she's in deep trouble. And this wasn't the case last week. He was at 32% in Wayne County 8 days ago. So this is people changing their minds, deciding, saying, I think I wanted to see something from Harris. I'm not seeing it. And then there's also a little bit of what we said before, which is that 2020 first-time voter is not voting. They're not voting. So like who you get to come out obviously alters the margin. And if Trump is getting first-time voters out, CNN wrote an entire headline about some of the groups that are targeting first-time voters and made fun of them for it. When they do that, they're scared shitless and they're really just trying to bully those people. They're trying to scare them into not helping, not doing their work. And then look at Macomb and Oakland. You're telling me she's going to win them by 6 points and run away with this thing, bro? Are you freaking kidding me? For people who, I mean, I absolutely find that laughable. Biden won that region of the Southeast by 17 points combined. Right. She's winning by 6. Yeah, I mean, it's basically even. Before leaning, it's even. It's like Harris 49.6, Trump 47.2. Then when you lean, he doesn't really move. She takes the undecided.
She must be losing Macomb, obviously.
Oh, like on a bloodbath. like in an absolute bloodbath. He won Macomb by, let me get my
And
hand.
Oakland's probably going to split. The upscale areas will stick with Harris like they did with Biden, but not add a whole lot to margin.
Yeah.
And the other parts of Oakland are trending Trump.
Even if that's the problem.
For those that don't know, Oakland
areas.
is suburban county, but it's part like rural, part mid-scale, part upscale. It's changed over the past since 2016, become a little more upscale. So, but basically, if you're the Harris campaign, you're banking on running up big margins out of Wayne and Oakland in order to survive. They're what they recognize, they're going to lose votes in rural areas. They're going to lose votes in blue collar, urban and suburban areas. So they're expecting big black urban margins, minority margins, Hispanic margins, Arab margins in Michigan, and big upscale vote as they perceive it in places like Oakland County. And they think, they'll add the Ann Arbors and the places like that. And that's their basis. And unless they're running big numbers out of Oakland, they're in trouble. And they need to be competitive in Macomb. Macomb, famously the blue collar Union County what's his name, the Clinton pollster did big holes. Stanley Greenberg did big polls on.
That's
focus groups on to explain how Clinton won him back and all that jazz. How they were Reagan Republicans for a period of time, Bush Republicans for a period of time, or like W, then didn't like W. But what the dynamics are is that they're recognizing they're bleeding out badly in rural areas. What they're not recognizing, if you follow a lot of the Democratic accounts, is they're bleeding out in urban areas, and they're not adding to the suburban areas because they're only thinking of their kind of suburb, not the working class suburb, which includes trailer parks in the census definition, not the blue collar suburb, not the blue collar exurb, not the pure middle class one, right? The person who's got a middle class job, community college degree, not making a lot of money, who's gotten absolutely hammered the last 4 years economically. That voter group. The kind of folks that know somebody that works construction, the kind of folks that know somebody that has been in the military. They have some cultural connection. They're not part of the coming apart of Charles Murray that's apart entirely from the American electorate, the American people. And so what Richard's talking about is what you're seeing in Michigan is a massive movement in rural areas back towards Trump off of 2020 as ancestral blue-collar Democrats who liked Biden don't care for her. And you're seeing something that looks a lot more like Hillary 2016, but even worse in rural areas. And the reason why she's in big trouble is she's not adding in the suburbs and she's getting hammered in her. And we've been talking about this now for a better part of a year, saying, look at it's younger. We just explained the Kennedy vote. The Kennedy vote wasn't, old boomers anymore. The Kennedy vote were young, urban, minority, podcast listening, working class voters who disproportionately care about unique issues: food freedom, medical freedom, financial freedom, political freedom, because they're that part of that they're the Joe Rogan unit. You could call them the Joe Rogan voter, right? They're the voter who Joe Rogan's more influential than CNN or MSNBC or CBS or ABC or 60 Minutes. These are people who don't even know really what 60 Minutes is. They don't know what the big controversy is because they never watched 60 Minutes. So for that group, that the group that Kennedy was targeting, and now Kennedy's targeting on behalf of Trump, this was a group that was ready to divorce the Democratic Party, just needed an excuse to marry Trump, and we'll see what happens down ballot. We'll get to that, down the road a bit.
Not good.
There the issue is the Republican candidates are still trailing in a lot of these states. But when you go back and look, that's when we'll get to some historical metrics about how these things might trend. Ultimately that it's going to be Trump leading Trump has the coattails, nobody else. And we'll see how long those coattails are. But if you're getting momentum to the point you're at 3-4 points, the other thing that stood out to me, so not only have they missed who they were losing and why, and that Harris would not be a diversity DEI replacement for that voter group, they convinced themselves of that. But the other thing is, it's become clear to me, they really think 2020 was an organic turnout effort.
Yeah.
That it was a pandemic effort, that all these voters that turned out in mail-in votes were authentically, organically interested in the race. Like, I started realizing why they weren't concerned about voter registration rolls, and they're not concerned about massive declines in mail-in voting, is they think these are just organic Democratic voters that are now going to shift their voting patterns. And it's like there's two major problems. One, they're like the advert, the salesman who sells themselves an ad, as the old saying goes, that nobody will buy an ad quicker than a salesman who should know better. Is that they bought their own ad about 2020. The 2020 was not, there was no fornication that took place. Nothing unusual or exceptional took place. That they just made sure people got an honest chance to vote, and they voted honestly. And that they're going to vote honestly again this time. And well, rather than do mail-in voting because COVID's not around, they're going to vote in person or vote early. And they're not worried at all about the massive decline in voter registration rolls for Democrats or the massive decline in mail-in voting participation. And what they don't realize is two things. I mean, my view is a good portion of these voters were voters who didn't know they voted in 2020. That, some portion of these were people who would not have voted but for mail-in voting. And in some cases, it's because maybe more than a few of them didn't exist really. Now that the voter rolls have been purged of a lot of padding that took place in 2020. But however you perceive it, but maybe you think every vote was on the up and up. Okay, that's fine. These are voters who still wouldn't have voted, but for mail-in voting, but for somebody knocking on the door and sending them a ballot and saying, please vote, please vote, please vote. The fact they're not voting this time is, in my view, a reflection of two things. One, that they needed mail-in votes to get questionable, dubious ballots from the nursing homes and apartment complexes of people who didn't know they otherwise voted. And secondly, they needed that marginal voter. They needed mail-in voting because otherwise they weren't inclined or interested to vote.
Yeah.
That it just wasn't there. That whether you attribute it to more dubious means, as I do, or you attribute it to the conscientious means,
matter? Yeah,
it doesn't matter. These are people who are not going to suddenly show up at the voter polls if they're not even taking the time to fill out a mail-in vote. They're going to go down and wait in line. And you can hear all this Democratic chatter trying to explain why is there a decline in North Carolina? Why is there a decline in Virginia? Why is there a decline in Georgia? Why is there a decline in Pennsylvania? Yeah. They're like, no, well, some, like Simon Rosenberg, running around telling everybody, the hopium guy, actually, we're doing great. We're doing better than 2020. We're doing better than 2022. He just thinks faking data and faking they're so used to lying to themselves and lying to other people that now they buy their own lies. Yeah. And so they don't realize they have an early voting problem. They don't realize they have a get out the vote problem. They don't realize they have a mail-in voting problem. But I think when you combine the shift of younger voters, and I think you've nailed it, it's going to be your older marginal Democratic voter who doesn't vote, who did vote in 2020, is not voting in 2020.
Yeah.
And for those that don't remember, the only thing I was trying to gather in 2020 was how much the pandemic could create artificial turnout. Because with normal turnout, Trump wins 2020. And I don't think anybody would question that now.
Is that even controversial? Right. Like, is that even right?
Exactly. And instead, they were able to get out just enough, literally just enough. Remember, they had to stop the count to make sure they had enough. They couldn't tell us how much was there. They had to tell us how much was there in the morning and the next day. Remember Georgia? It was always 99.8%. And then all of a sudden, it was still 98, and there were 5,000 more votes.
Fulton's got 35,000 more ballots. Yeah. Okay.
Well, a few more.
Fulton has 100,000 more ballots. What?
That's what they had to do to squeeze out, and that was art. And whether you attribute it to the unique factors of the pandemic and the mail-in vote, or you attribute it, as I did, to a few more dubious mechanisms, like dead people voting, people in nursing homes voting without knowing they're voting, people in apartment buildings voting without knowing they're voting. A lot of that places where they had centralized mail drops that were made easy by the mass mailing of mail-in ballots and the easy Dropbox return of mail-in ballots. But like as 2,000 Mules and other films have documented. But however you factor it in, they're not getting that turnout. And you're seeing it in the data. They're not that interested in voting, period. So that whatever you attribute it to, she's going to have a drop-off in the older Democratic voter. And where it's going to show up is urban and rural areas, is my belief. Not so much suburban areas. It's going to be a lot of your older and rural areas. She's just going to drop off votes that increases his share, combined with the younger voter massively shifting to Trump.
Let's look at that for a second, because remember what people that, who these first-time 2020 voters were. And then let's look at I think it just jumps right out. It's like she's winning because Michigan is a funny state by age group. Let me read first. And then I got to go back to the black vote for a second here. But this is what the margins were in 2020. 18 to 24 were 62 for Biden, 36 for Trump. Now and by the way, we had him getting killed among 18 to 24-year-olds. Biden was winning them overwhelmingly. Now, before leaning, it is Trump 44.6 to 38.3. Everybody is seeing this. Glenn Garif saw it in Michigan. Mitchell saw it in Michigan. Epic on Murray saw it in Michigan. The New York Times is seeing it. Everybody is seeing it. And I think part of it, because now I'm starting to get a much better feeling, is that the part of the vote that was new in 2020, that part that voted, overwhelmingly for Biden, that young part that was a new voter, and it wasn't only, young, but that is not going to be there, this electorate, period, full stop. They're not voting for Harris. Now, the 25 to 29 is still a Harris voting block by nearly 20 points. And it's like, why? Well, because it's whiter, it's more educated, because they have more PhDs, because they live in more upscale areas, right? Because that group, and I think part of it too, Robert, is some of them that were just those younger liberals in 2020 are now 4 years older, and they're in the 25 to 29 category. And there's that newer, younger vote for Trump that is not at all liberal. Not at all.
Yeah.
They're not.
And how are they doing? Like the young, your classic middle millennials, like 30 to 40.
So the 30 to 40 is, well, let me read what it was in 2020 first. It was barely Trump, 50 to 48. Now that 30 to 39 age group is 47.6 for Trump, 44.1 for Harris. When you push them, 41.1 to 48.9. The real movement is in the 40 to 49, which Biden won. Which Trump won. So it's like some of those more liberals that were younger got pushed up. Harris is winning them, and he's doing better with the younger side of that spectrum. And then
so younger millennials and Zoomers and some older Gen Xers.
Yes, yeah, and yeah. So here we go. So now those 40 to 49s that are now in the 50 to 64, that's a pretty big jump. I mean, those were for Biden in 2020 by 2 points. All right. And think about the 50 to 64-year-old Zoomer in 2020 during the pandemic. Now, very different. Trump 50.5 to Harris 42.4. And when you lean them, he maintains that lead, 54 to 46. That's a big difference. Here is where everyone, like this and the New York Times, I'm telling you, if Nate Cohen gave me his data set, I put it in a market set, give me the most recent ones and give me the 2020 ones, and I'm going to find it in a second. And I'm going to show him exactly what he did wrong. All right. Super seniors are different than seniors. And when you poll super seniors, sometimes your 65 plus looks great, looks fine, but it's not. And you're understating
borderline silent generation and older baby boomers.
Man, they're tough. They're the ones who will go, just mark me down for Trump. Click. That constantly. And the New York Times knows that, which is why they started including these interviews of people. I mean, one of the reasons why they started including these interviews of people who are for Trump that they know enough about demographically that if they did not complete the interview, they're still keeping them in the national poll. All right. So the national is the key word there, folks. All right. So in any event, look at super seniors, man. I mean, that's a 20-point margin for Trump, but look at seniors. It's a 10-point with 65 to 74. That's actually a 6 first or 5 plus a 7, then leaning about 10. So about 10-point margin for Harris. Combining them, however, and people are like, that's not a good sign for Republicans. Democrats always win the senior vote in Michigan, folks. Always. All right. There's things about Michigan very, very different. However, this time, it's not going to turn out that way. Biden won it 50. He won 65 plus 51 to 49. Now Trump is winning it by that exact same margin. So it has flipped because of the latter end of the group of people we were talking about before, shrinking Biden's margin, right, or shrinking the Democratic margin from Biden, and then super seniors really not budging. They're still for Trump. When you look at that middle age group, it's a lot less Democratic than it used to be. Harris is only winning it by 6. Joe Biden won it. It was basically even. So it's the younger crowd making it. Again, remember, it's 4 years later. And then the 18 to 29 is like 5 points. And people are going to say something about it. And I'm telling you, it's going to be right. All right. It's going to be very close to right, if not spot on right, because of the 18 to 24 not being. And when you look at like at these other polls, all they're telling you folks is 35 and below. Trump is tied or he's leading Kamala Harris with the 35 and below, but she's winning seniors. And that's why their numbers are like that, because they're not breaking it down by age, because their sample's not large enough to do what I do. That's number one. And they're not going to show it to you because I don't think they want to be the first ones to proclaim it, but there's no doubt they see it. All right. And then the 45 to 64 age group. Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to say the 45 to 64 age group is another big, like that latter end of the group we were just talking about, are really making the 50 to 60 is what's doing it. 45 to 60, that's what's doing it. Biden won them. He won them by several points, and now she's losing them 54 to 46. And by the way, we saw all this in the polling. Again, we saw all of this in the polling in 20. So nothing was that much of a surprise to us. When it bore out, it really wasn't. Biden did a little bit marginally better than we thought he was going to do, but you could see it. Now here, it's almost a complete reversal, which is why Trump is now leading by a margin about the same size as Biden's margin in 2020, shenanigans included, but yeah, I mean, this is like one thing layered on top of the other. It's not just one thing. And like, right. I'm going to play a clip from Harry here. All right, real quick. Here he is talking about black men. And then I want to show you, did I get a chance to put education by race in yet? Oh, not. Yes, I did that. I didn't do gender by race. So 1 second, when you're making a point, I'm going to throw it in there so we can all look at it, because I would really, really like to see that. I think that it's just going to show you Darvio, who writes articles for Newsweek. All right. He's a young African-American political commentator. And what he's been trying to tell people, whether he likes it or not, is that this is real. It's only a matter of how much. And oh, by the way, black women may be the shocker. And I'm looking at this, and sure, he's doing better with black men. But here's one thing that's getting me. In 2020, you and I talked ad nauseum about how Trump was doing better with black men, and he did. But what nobody saw, including myself, was him basically doubling his support with black women. Nobody saw that coming, man. And now I'm actually seeing it. So how is it going to be, about as much as I project, or is it going to be worse than everyone thinks? And it's a disaster. It's a big negative for her if that turns out to be the case, which Harry's going to explain in a second. Here we go.
It's a trend line that I never noticed before and make me go, whoa. This is one of them, right? This is the Democratic margin among black men under the age of 45 in presidential elections. You go back to November of 2012, what do you see? You see Obama by 81. Clinton only won him by 63. Then we're all the way.
Stop. Just want to say, saw that. Okay. So point being is, saw that.
Down to Biden last time around by 53.
Saw that, just didn't see how much was going to come from women.
A tremendous drop already. And then you take a look at the average of the most recent polls, and Kamala Harris is up by only 41 points. That is about half the margin that Obama won them by back in November of 2012. And this, I think, is, when Barack Obama goes in last week when he was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, essentially talking to young black men, he made it seem like it was a Kamala Harris specific problem. This is part of a long-standing trend of young black men moving away from the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris is just the latest to face that magnitude of younger black men going towards the Republicans.
All right, before he asks that question, Robert, what I want to talk about before he gets into what he asks and follows up Harry with, he's just said Obama made it out like it was a Harris problem. Okay, this is why Obama did that. Because Obama, as a black man, knows what the dirty little secret no one wants to say out loud. Young black men don't want to be bullied and pushed around by like not any black woman, but a black woman like her. All right. And we all know what I'm talking about. All right. Very little respect for that kind of a person. And this may be worse than anyone thinks it is because of that. All right. I mean, we played one of those podcasts the other day. It's like, yeah, Charlemagne, of course, hanging on because he's just a Democratic shill, but he does not represent those who are not only his age, but younger in what he's saying. Like he doesn't. If you watch some of these other shows, the Carter family, right? All these and that's probably more indicative of what we're talking about here. So, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's like nobody really wants to say it, but it's like, is it going to be 41? Is it? Is it?
Yeah, well, and I
Is
think
it
that,
really?
well, particularly amongst younger black men, no. The
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's it,
yeah,
right?
because partially this is just a generational shift that once you get distance from
Yes.
the seminal event
Civil
that
rights
earned
era. Yeah.
exactly, like, and it's the same thing that happened before. The abolition of slavery led to about 3 generations of locked-in loyalty from black voters.
Yes.
Once you got to the 4th generation, sufficiently removed from abolition, the politics of the Depression began to change things, and they began to shift and become a competitive voter group. Also, the Great Migration had an impact on that because they could vote in the urban North and were competing for political power. And then ultimately, the Democratic Party chose to be the party of civil rights in 1964, which you can argue about. That was a national party, not the local, because the Southern Democrats sure did. But that's because because Barry Goldwater opposed civil rights is why Republicans got the label anti-civil rights.
Yep.
And that earned older black voter support and another 3 generations. But you looked at when did it start to fade from actually abolition of slavery, which I would argue is more consequential than the civil rights bills. That faded about generation 4 by the 1930s, 1920s, 1930s was already starting to fade. And now we're in that same time frame since the 1960s. And so that if you looked at what, as Richard and I've been talking about now for a year, there's been a massive shift amongst working class minorities of a younger generation, black and Hispanic especially, but not limited to them. But particular to men more than women in those groups, but not exclusively them. But these are voters that are just divorcing from the Democratic Party. That even if Barack Obama was running now in 2024 and no longer as the first ever black president in defense of his presidency, which is what was the unique factor in 2012,
Yeah.
Obama would be getting killed amongst these voter groups or not winning them by anywhere near
89.
Yeah, there'd be no 80 plus point margin amongst black men and 90 point
81,
plus
81.
margin amongst black women. That's and he's still convinced that he's the reason those people voted. They voted because he just happened to be the first black guy in the White House.
Yeah,
He
thinks they love him. He thinks they love him, which is why he thinks that he can go and lecture black men, like basically say, do your damn duty. Who the hell do you think you are for not wanting to vote for this woman? Something wrong with you.
I'm a Kenyan man raised by a white woman from a family of slave owners,
Holy shit.
brought up in Indonesia. And you, African-American young man, you're going to vote for the Indian raised in Canada. So and he's so clueless, and you could tell he was getting agitated because he wasn't getting the response that he
wanted. Yep.
I mean, he was worshipped by older black women as the perfect symbol that they wanted of black male pride in America and black male power in America. And he got treated so special, just like his mommy did, that he was always delusional about himself, delusional about the lack of appeal he had beyond personality, that his policies were never majority policies in the country. It should have been double digits in 08. I mean, that was his failure that it wasn't because of all his snobbish comments. Well, and Hillary beating him up on it at the end with older Democrats. But how does all this relate? It comes back to blue collar Democrats in the Midwest who feel betrayed by Obama at different levels. And the older white union types. I mean, when you're not getting the firemen's union, you're not getting the Teamsters union, you're not getting an enthusiastic UAW, you're not going to win Michigan. And then you add to that, you're bleeding out votes in rural areas. You're bleeding out Arab voters. There's Jewish voters there in certain parts of Detroit. You're bleeding out Jewish votes.
27%.
I mean, all you're getting is you're getting the upscale college professional, no matter which age group they're in. But you're not getting the urban youth, you're not getting the rural youth, you're not getting the working class youth, and then that older voter that was a 2020 special ain't coming back in 2024 because the few that might have been honest ones, kind of like old Scranton Joe, I mean, if anybody knew Scranton Joe, it was the Midwestern older Democrat. They don't care if he's doing this or that, diddling the wrong people and so forth. He made sure that
People's
Junior got out
legs
of
and
jail.
shit. They don't care.
Made sure that the old man got a construction gig when he needed one. I mean, that's the number one thing Biden has done. You dig into the jobs data, he's just made sure the government keeps hiring people all over the place. That's the only reason why there's any jobs data of any kind. It's just not enough to matter to working class voters because they know those jobs don't last. So she's going to get, but what I underestimated is that all along they thought diversity, equity, and inclusion would bring back the younger vote, would bring back the black vote, would bring back the Hispanic vote, would bring back the working class vote. That, hey, she comes from a middle class family in Canada. They leave out the Canada part, but they really thought their problem was Joe was too old, too white, too male, too traditional, when that was the only reason they were holding on in the Midwest.
Robert, are they, and I guess I'm going to want to let him finish here for sure, but are they missing out that, how could I put this? Are they missing the fact that some of these younger, not only black, but younger voters in general looked at that 18 to 24, the 25 to 29s going their way? It's just a small group. It's like they got their hands on this group, and this group is liberal, and this is their group. They missed like the 18 to 29-year-old voters that are now 18 to 29. They missed that generation, and it's a generation that's been listening to the blowback and feeling the blowback of that, of what made the one that came before them more liberal. They just thought that it was going to keep going forever, that they were just going to keep adding to the electorate, these liberal voters forever. I did do education by gender. I mean, excuse me, race by gender, gender by race, whatever you want to call it. Let's finish the clip and then I'll show it to you because, again, I can't help but to think Harry and all the rest of them are really harping on one age group. It's like, there's no doubt. I'm wondering if Darvio's right because of what I'm seeing. And I hope Darvio's watching right now because I'm going to show him something that is just unbelievably shocking. And if this, I mean, considering she's the first, so, a lot of Black Americans do not view her as a true Black American because she doesn't have the experience of an African American woman, and she was raised very differently. She was brought up very differently. Her ethnicity is very different. I mean, let's just cut it what it is. So maybe, they're in this echo, they're in this bubble, they're in this echo where they just talk to each other. Things so great, everything's going so well, and they're totally missing something. But here, let's let Harry finish.
What's most interesting here is the trend line and where some of the biggest drops happened or already happened in this case. How about black men overall?
How about black men overall? It's part of the same picture. We're looking once again, if younger black men, it looks like the worst Democratic performance since 1960, since JFK versus Richard Nixon. It's the same thing among black men overall. Again, part of a similar trend, but here actually the drop-off isn't as dramatic, right? Barack Obama won him by 85, then you see 71 with Clinton, 69, Biden, basically the same thing, holding steady. But here, again, very, very weak, only a 54-point margin. Now, again, still winning them by a large margin, but considerably lower than what we're used to, certainly considerably lower what we had during the Obama years. Yeah. The bottom line is Kamala Harris with younger black men and then black men overall putting in historically weak performance for a Democratic candidate.
Is she getting any relief with black women?
All right. So, we're talking about the trend line, right? And black women, look, she's doing better with black women than she is doing among black men. But here, there isn't a trend line almost until we get to Kamala Harris. So again,
bang. Okay. Bang, doggy. Bang. I want to show you something. Let's stop. Let's pull this thing down. There we go. And let's put this puppy back up. Here is gender by race. Again, I did not see women, maybe marginally, but nothing like, folks, what you think, you would, what happened where they went from like 5 to 9, and now they're going to go from like 9 to what is the question. When you look at gender by race, white men, first of all, are giving Trump a far bigger margin. Okay, that's disgusting. All right. And then Trump, this is why I tell people all the time, the white woman in the suburb, the educated white woman. They're not the educated white woman in the suburb is not the woman in the suburb. And the educated white woman in the suburb is not even the white woman. You know what I mean? Like there's this harping on this like subgroup that makes up maybe 13% of the national electorate. In Michigan, folks, it's 65% non-college. 65%. And then people would wonder why Democrats can even hold it. It's because of this these weird kind of anomalies in Michigan that aren't like the nation overall. And Democrats have got a stronger ancestral connection there, or had a stronger ancestral connection. And Trump began to crack that and break that. And now I'm just seeing things that I've never seen. I've never seen this in the state of Michigan. First of all, that margin with white men, I've never seen a 22 point margin without undecideds. White women is 6. It closes to 6. So, they both win them and split them fairly evenly. And then you have black men off the rip. 20% of black men say they're going to vote for Trump. When you lean them in Pennsylvania, by the way, he's winning the leans on black men. So it actually goes up more than this. But in Michigan, this is almost identical to what, again, Mitchell research and everyone else has seen in Michigan. This is that I am totally on the page with what they're talking about, because I see it. There it is. Clear as day. All right. And that was 12% in 2020, but women were not. Women were like 6%, 5%, 4%. I mean, they were very, very, black women were very single digits, mid to low single digits. And then now we're looking, it's 12% off the rip. And when you lean them, they actually break more for Donald Trump in the leans than black men do. Okay, so that, what is that, folks? Could be a social bias. It could be a social bias. People simply unwilling at first to say who they're going to vote for anyway. And if that's the case, they're only a few points less than black men. And this is age related. If you look below 30, the 39 to 30, 30 to 39 age group and below, you're going to see them all packed in there. And your jaw's going to drop at the margin. You're going to be like, oh my God. I mean, this cannot be dismissed. This can't, and I'm wondering, like, sure, it could be less. Sure, it could be. It could not be. It could be more. Let's get real. It's like we're all like wanting to pretend like it can't be, because that's the safe bet. That's the conservative bet. But I'm telling you, with Trump, it's always the worst thing to do, to be conservative, because he closes strong. You can never catch how fast it's moving. No pollster can. And then boom, you look like an idiot on election day. Like, it's just the way it's like, not all of us, but most of us. And if I'm seeing this, I trust it. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think I'd estimated a couple of months ago Harris would win black vote by about 60 points. And this appears to be right, at least in Michigan, right on point with that. That about win the black female vote by 70, win the black male vote by 50. Or maybe a little less with black females, more like 65. And because they vote more than black men typically, even assuming that pattern holds, that she's going to win the black vote by about 60 points, which is substantially down off, which is what we've been talking about for a while. Now, the portion of the black vote she's losing is disproportionately young. It's the new, but that's the even bigger problem for Democrats, is that this is a generational shift against them that was not supposed to happen or occur. And I think that it is just consistent with all the data that we've seen. Now, did you pick up anything interesting in terms of other ethnic groups in Michigan? In other words, like Swedes, Yankees, any of those crowds?
So some of the Norwegian vote that we looked at, again, it's different than Wisconsin and others. It was a little bit, that's what some of the stuff we have to tweak. We'll probably change that. Because the subgroups are so small, then it'll
what about like the English ancestry, or
Yeah,
Italian
so
or Irish? Because
this
it was
is
interesting
where
what you're picking up in Pennsylvania was
is
the
different.
trend of the Germans, the trend of the Irish, and like
Yes.
German, that's going to hold up in places like Wisconsin. Irish is going to hold up in parts of Michigan and parts of Wisconsin. So Italian will hold up in parts of Michigan as well. So it's those old ethnic groups, the Germans, the Italians, the Irish. That was a big group for Trump to bring back that he lost out a little bit of in 2020.
It is.
And then the other was the English group. The reason why we like tracking that they're reason why Michigan's a little bit more Democratic than Wisconsin and Pennsylvania is because of these English. It's the old Yankee English. It's that tradition. But what's interesting is if they're trending away from where Biden won them, then that also tells you that maybe Maine's in play, maybe New Hampshire's in play. It could explain why upstate New York is trending the way it is. But it would also tell you something about Michigan too.
Yeah, so they are the English. So when we ask people who are, of course, they're white, but
do we know how much Biden won them by? Was it 30?
Well, I can tell you, I can tell you what he won them by in our polling. All right, so I they don't do that over at Edison. I don't believe any of them do that. So Biden won right off the rip. He was in 62%. And then when leaned, he probably won, north of 65% of them, maybe 2/3.
But yeah, that was my recollection, about 30.
Yeah. So she has split.
Because it was when you had that data in 2020 that I realized New Hampshire was gone.
Wait until you see Pennsylvania, though. It's completely different than Michigan. In Pennsylvania, it's close with those voters, which is probably why, again, Pennsylvania will be more Trumpy than Michigan. But I don't know because there's so many
Pennsylvania that like Joe Biden because of the Scranton Joe, because of all the Philadelphia advertising for 40 years, because he's in Delaware, and Delaware's main media market is Philadelphia. So look at the Irish, look at the Germans, look at the ethnic Catholic groups, look at the Dutch and the Danish. So when you're looking at that, they're very small subgroups, so you got to be careful reading into them, folks. But the bottom line is, think Grand Rapids. Think Grand Rapids. Now, look, you see the finish margin, 70 to 29.8. That's more along the lines of what we saw with the English in 2020 with Biden. Only it's closer now. It's much closer now. It's certainly still a Harris group, but it's much closer. Americans break for Trump. Those who say I'm American break for Trump. But that Dutch and Danish, combined, I would rather see those sample sizes combined because they are, so similar in voting patterns, but they're not the same. You're picking up the same pattern. Germans,
but it is the same pattern.
Irish trending Trump, Italians trending Trump.
Oh yeah, the Irish number
much more competitive than they were in 2020.
The Irish number is a real problem, and that is also the case in Pennsylvania because Joe Biden was winning Irish in 2020.
He is Irish, right? He's Irish Joe. He's Scranton Joe. He's a good Catholic boy. Goes to church. And then he does the same things that the priests like to do.
Also, though, come on, bro. Look at the Swedes. I mean, look, those are all closer. And while we're talking about small sample sizes, guys, they're still much, much closer than they were in 2020.
And it's part of a common trend that you're now picking up.
It is.
It was like when you're picking up the Jewish vote trend, you picked it up first. And then we started seeing a bunch of other surveys show Harris bleeding, that the old 50-point Jewish margins weren't there, which was another reason why Florida's gone. Florida's cooked.
New York, too. I mean, Pennsylvania still got a nice chunk. Pennsylvania still has a solid chunk of Jewish voters. New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, there's still a nice
polls.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
up with the polls. That's good for Wisconsin, especially
57 to 43. And then the Norwegians are just so much they're so small here. I don't want to read anything into it.
That was the number one group that helped. Polls might matter too in some Illinois congressional races, depending on how this trends down ballot. If you have a bunch of people that don't vote that voted in 2020, on the Democratic side, and this goes to your coattails argument that you've long explained, the down ballot Republicans add 0 to Trump. They have no coattails for Trump. But Trump in 2 presidential elections has proven again and again he has real coattails.
That
his there's people that will come out just for him. In fact, I went back and looked. 2022, there were 18 House seats that in an R3 environment, national environment, would be expected to vote Republican. That voted Democrat. And I dug into the data, disproportionately low drop off of Trump-oriented working class voters in those districts. So if that voter comes out, all of a sudden, what may happen down ballot may, like what we're seeing now, may not happen ultimately. There may be a Republican trend if that 2016 Trump coattails, Trump 2020 coattails reappears once again. especially because he's getting some of these key groups in these key congressional districts that, like Polish voters in key areas. I mean,
It
the
may
reason
help New
George
York
Wallace did
too. It may
well in
help
South
some people in New
Milwaukee.
York.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, George Wallace did well in South Milwaukee because of the polls, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, that back in 1964 Democratic primary, and again in '68 in general election. So yeah, that's very interesting to see.
Look at just by party. We've just glanced over party, but Biden won independents by, hold on, let me go back to my thing here. By the way, this will be a even or R+1 electorate as of now.
Which is key, by the way. Almost all the national polls are predicting D+3.
It's insane. And some of even the Midwest polls. I mean, it's absolutely insane. The bottom line is in 2020 in Michigan, it was freaking even. It was even at 38. We have it 38-37 right now, but Biden won the independent vote by 6. All right. Oh, and supposedly he won 6% of Republicans and only 3% of Democrats voted for Trump. All right. So that's what they had for Edison anyway, folks. Edison. The AP Vocast is different, and we could go and compare some of that. What's cool about that is that they get an independent affiliation, which we do as well. And I'm going to show you that in a second. But
you have him winning the crossover vote again.
He is slightly.
Those that don't know the crossover vote is, do you get more of the other party than they get of your party?
He's slightly winning the crossover vote, and there's something else key going on. I mean, he's completely reversed the margin with independents. He is now winning them by the margin Joe Biden was winning them by, slightly winning the crossover vote. And then I did detail for a reason. This someone else, man, that's like half the vote of what it was in 2020. These are all of these third-party voters from 16 everyone talked about that were breaking for Biden so hardcore. Well, and they voted in big droves, right? They're not this time. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's a big problem for her. That's like a huge chunk of Biden's. I mean, it's a marginal election, folks. It's a huge chunk of Biden's vote, compared to his overall margin. And then when you look, together, if you were to put them together, it's roughly the same because they're so small. They don't impact the independent sample that much just by identification. Oh, actually, wait, by ideology is cool because there's something else that's important. Joe Biden won moderates. Let's listen to this. And we have moderates pretty close to what they were. I think we have them at 38. They were 38. We have a little less conservatives in the electorate. Liberals, they had at 25. We got them like 26, almost 27. If you round up, we have it at 27% liberal. But here we have, let's go up here. We have, Trump losing moderates 56.5 to 43.5. Joe Biden won moderates 62 to 36. And that's why I'm focusing here on the two-party vote share, folks. Conservatives, 80 to 12. That's roughly the same margin. And then liberals, 82 to 17. That is not the same margin. Biden won liberals 89 to 10. This margin looks a lot like the 2016 ideology margin when a bunch of Bernie voters were pissed off and went to Donald Trump. So there's something. Why? Where could these people be coming from? So many of the groups that have a big problem right now. Jewish voters he's inching up with because they're pissed about, most of them are secular, but some of them are pissed about the Democratic Party's position. So they're going to Trump. I mean, it's that simple. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit, and a little bit of a lot of things adds up. And also the Arab vote. We have a mayor in Wayne County, an Arab mayor in Wayne County saying he endorsed Donald Trump. And he said that, he's telling everybody else to vote for Trump that he knows. He doesn't know anybody who's voting for Harris. I mean, these sound anecdotal, but I'm telling you, I'm seeing these anecdotes in the data. And then look, that's ideology. So a lot of ground with moderates, when you look at Republican identification, a few of the things that we do, other people don't, which is really cool. Traditional Republicans, Harris is getting 13% of. But among those who are America First, she's getting statistically nothing of. Among the rest who say they're unsure. And by the way, there are more, you can see there are more America First than traditional, but it's pretty close. Only about half of that say they're unsure, which means they're probably MAGA and they don't want to say it. And if you look at the margin, they look a lot more like America First Republicans than they do the traditional Republican. That traditional Republican just won't be Republican for long, Robert. They just won't. And then there it is. Among those who are equally aligned, and I like to call these people non-believers. if you are equally aligned, you don't have strong convictions. Okay. You don't have strong convictions. Now, you can say you share little in common with either and have very strong convictions. But most of the people that fall into the, oh, I'm equally aligned with both parties. That is not a powerful position to be in when it comes to conviction. It's just not. It's like, oh, I'm a moderate on this issue and that. It means you don't really believe in shit. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to mock any voter here. I never like to do that. I'm simply saying that's who these people are. And I am telling you from experience, if you would hear and monitor things the way I do, then you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, those who share little in common with either were Kennedy voters. A lot of them is where Kennedy had his support, and obviously Trump is winning them now. But among those who align with the Republican Party and Democratic Party, it's very, very close. So independents have no particular lean this time, which is interesting because here's what I think is going on. I think there are some Democrats who are claiming they're independent. There's no registration in Michigan, folks. And if they called themselves Democrats in 16, they probably, or called themselves independents in 16, they probably were calling themselves Democrats to the exit polls in 20. And now those people who were saying they were Democrats to the exit pollsters in 20, who are unhappy with their situation, they're going to be calling themselves independents. And yet, Trump is still winning the independent vote combined by 5 points. So he's not cannibalizing his vote. She looks like she's cannibalizing a bit of her partisan vote and yet still losing. I mean, very rarely.
No, she's maxed out. Her ceiling is
she's
lower.
Maxed out, brother. She's maxed out.
Her floor projects and get worse. Yeah, because it sounds like the little pockets of support they were able to steal off in Michigan in the past elections, especially for Biden, and older urban voters and older rural voters that were ancestrally Democrat that didn't vote in 2016. They got to vote in 2020. They're not getting to vote in 2024. That the younger working class voter that they needed in places like especially downtown Detroit, but places like Flint, Michigan, and other places as well, they're losing by large margins in terms of a demographic shift. That the blue collar ex-urban and suburban voter that is drifting back toward Trump away from Biden. That the sort of Dutch skeptics, the Reformed Protestants out Calvin College, Grand Rapids, that were an abiding skeptical Trump voter group, is now more coming back to Trump than away from him. And there's that she has no pockets to pick up, that she's maxed out where she can, and that she's likely to continue to decline rather than rise. And you're looking at probably my preview, given where things are trending, given who I think is going to turn out, given what the turnout data has been so far, given the dynamics of this election, given where the Democratic machine is operating, I think we're looking at a 4 to 5 point win for Trump in Michigan.
I mean, honestly, that could absolutely happen. And I never thought I'd see the day, Robert. I never thought I'd see the day. Even if she was to eke out the popular vote, she could still lose Michigan by like several points. And I mean, eke out the popular vote. I mean, like 1 point.
It's at least it's a lean in Trump's era. It's been a lean 2.5 point to Trump off the national margin, Michigan.
Yeah, yes. And here's the interesting thing. You just said that as we were talking about it, somebody pinged me with the final Harvard-Harris poll, which is Harris +2. The full field is only Harris +1, and the battleground states are Trump +2. So they have a 4 point overall from the two-way, a 3 point shift to Trump in the battlegrounds in the full. And the generic ballot, by the way, is Democrat +2. I'm telling you, I think that, Republicans have basically run out of time down ballot to catch Trump, and that is their own damn fault. And you're going to see it with the Senate races. I don't know why the hell you would pick Mike Rogers to run for Senate in this state. I don't know what. You're just not getting it. You're just not getting it. You pick a deep state hack to run against a deep state hack who the deep state supports over the other deep state hack. I mean, you are the dumbest party I have ever seen in. How many years am I doing this now? What freaking year is it? I mean, it's like I'm getting lost in the time warp that is Republican stupidity. I can't believe it anymore. It used to never cease to amaze me, but at this point, it's back to amazing me. Because how long could you possibly go making the same Chris Sununu mistakes, bro? Pat McCrory mistakes. You got Pat McCrory on two-way earlier this morning, right? I think this state is dead even because you lost, Pat, while Trump romped in your state. And you're pissed. And you did the what was that stupid organization that was seriously arguing? He was on a local radio show. The guy's like a celebrity here, a political celebrity. I love him. He's a great guy, but he's certainly a traditional Republican. And he's very good. He's known Pat McCrory. He's known Pat for many, many years. He's on Pat's show. Like, we could have won he's on Henry's show. We could have won North Carolina with 33% of the vote because Trump has got a max ceiling of 32, 31. What are you talking about? That's why you lost re-election. That is why you lost while Trump won by 4. All right. I mean, I just don't even know what to tell these people anymore, Robert. They honestly, at this point, deserve to die as a party in their own stupidity. They really do. The only thing keeping them afloat right now, the only thing is 2 things. One, Democrats cannot get out of the latte, boba drinking, urban area mindset. They just can't do it. And they alienate and they isolate people because they just are like somebody, by the way, on the same episode, the Democratic strategist, he's arguing the same thing. He said, we got to stop thinking like when bacon goes up $5, oh, well, bacon goes up, I'll just pay it. That is not acceptable in the rest of the country. Like, they have to get over the fact when you watch a tranny on the Olympics absolutely beat the ever-loving shit out of a biological woman until the point where her helmet reverses around her head, that is not okay with the rest of this country. This country is not all right with that. That and Trump are the only things saving them from complete suicide as a national party. And as I think we're going to see in 3 weeks and 1 day, it's not going to save them this time. They'll do better, they'll do better than Democrats, but this is an election, folks, with Trump on the top of the ballot, that they should have 55 seats in the Senate at least. They should have taken states that Democrats would have expected to hold on to, not because they're battlegrounds like Pennsylvania, like Michigan. By the way, Eric Hovde, you're the only one who may have a shot at this point. McCormick is closing quick. We'll see if he's got the time to do it. But some of these other people, like, I don't even want to get down the names, the blame game names. Like, you know who you are, trailing Trump by like 9-10 points. It's totally ridiculous. And honestly, I mean, I guess I am going to name drop, I guess, but you have to be more careful with the people you bring around you. If you want establishment support, you cannot fall for the establishment trick, which is, sure, I'll give you the endorsement if you hire my people. The answer to them is go yourself. All right. You're either going to do it in the spirit of unity, or I'm going to tell everyone you're a piece of shit and everything about this meeting. I'm going to go to Twitter. I'm going to go to War Room. I'm going to go on Newsmax. I'm going to go everywhere else that actual Republican voters go. And I'm going to tell everybody about our little talks. There's too much behind the curtain in the Republican Party, Robert. It's got to come out. Well, it has got to come out and be aired. The dirty laundry has got to stay. You guys got to come out to get some fresh air, brother. It has to.
You have the Republican Senate Fund releasing polls, by the way, that look absurd. To me, polls that this is someone who shouldn't be polling, period. Least of all being
paid. Same people over and over. I'll let you talk.
Yes, completely. Now, the flip side of that, though, is, for those that are, that ask the question in the chat and whatnot, the same issue is still present, that the institutional Republican Party and the generic Republican brand is not as trusted as Trump. Amongst these new working class populist inclined voters, because many of them are ancestrally Democrat, whether they're older union voters or they're younger millennial and Zoomer minority voters.
Yep.
They're voters that don't trust the Republican brand as a brand. They're divorcing from the Democratic Party, but they're not at all willing to unite as yet with the Republican Party. And that the down ballot Republican candidates have, as a whole, not all, but as a whole, run subpar campaigns, because they're co-opted by the political class that is more incompetent than the Democratic Party's version of it. Yeah. And it just tactically speaking. And then and they themselves, people like Mike Rogers in Michigan, have deep state type. They look like Bushites, not like Trumpites.
Yeah.
And that's where they're running into issues. Now, all that being said, these are candidates that Richard's point are, is if they run smart, savvy campaigns, not got sabotaged by DC, or allowed themselves to get sabotaged by DC, they would be in much better position at the moment. to truly piggyback.
Let's show
But I
my-
went
let's show
back.
my
The flip
graph.
side goes to
Here's
your
my
other
graph.
point.
Look at him.
Is
Look at him.
okay,
Running 5 points behind Donald Trump. Look at him.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing there is, that doesn't surprise me given who Rogers is. But it is CIA Slutkin he's up against. The two things they have going for them is in almost all these races, their Democratic opponent is, not Tester in Montana, is not Manchin in West Virginia. They're not people that have unique skill set. Even Bob Casey Jr. is not a chip off the old block. That's being proven on a day-to-day basis. See, people like Sheldon Brown, who thought they could play the old script and it would sing just fine in Ohio, they're really out of touch. People like Jackie Rosen here in Nevada, they're running ads that look like they're from the 1990s. And it's like, I'll give you an example. Like it's unfortunate, again, that these Republicans have run such poor campaigns that they can't piggyback and fall on Trump's coattails. But like they were interviewing, like one going to your point earlier on, they interviewed, this is one of these people just interviewing random people in Vegas about the election.
Yeah.
And two things stood out. One was that majority of these people are minority, Black or Hispanic. Normally that'd be like a 3-1 Democratic vote preference, especially people willing to talk on camera. Instead, it was split even. And some of the comments were fascinating. Like a younger Black woman said, they keep talking about abortion. I can't feed my kids right now. Why don't you worry about that? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, they don't understand that they're insulting these voters.
Yeah.
That, pretending the economy is great is insulting them. Not just gaslighting them, insulting them.
Insulting them.
A younger Black male voter, going to your question about the gender issue that Barack is hinting at but doesn't want to completely come to terms with, now, of course, he didn't want Harris and knew this was going to happen anyway. He just wanted Biden off and him to recruit the savior. Probably a celebrity from outside the political apparatus. Probably The Rock, which would have been an interesting election. They asked a younger Black man, and he's like, "Look, I'm not against a woman president, but don't you know she's going to get her opinions all in a bunch?"
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, right? And I mean, particularly some of the Arab voters there in Dearborn. You think they're all excited about voting for a woman president? Dearborn, Arab, Muslim. Well, so some people haven't been paying too much heed. But I went back and looked. Like, here's the fascinating myth that's out there, because I was curious, what are Democrats telling themselves? What are the left telling themselves? And they're telling themselves people like Simon Rosenberg are saying that 2024 is better than 2020 in terms of turnout. It's like completely false. But they've convinced, what is they've bought so many lies and told so many lies. They now believe their own lies.
They believe their own bullshit.
And they like truly believe it. And their narrative is a version of like what you were talking about. Yeah, we'll lose a few rural voters, because apparently, by the way, blue collar people only live in rural areas. Of course, it's like, did you skip the trailer park that's counted as a suburb down the street, or blue collar, or just go visit Monroe or Macomb County for a little while? That'll all be made up by the urban and suburban vote that's going to pour in for Harris. It was amazing. It was like hearing the Hillary analysis all over again. But I was like, okay, so how do they explain the polls always being off? Well, this is the big myth of 2022. It's, the polling before Dobbs, because somehow magically abortion changed polling forever, fixed polling. Somehow abortion fixed polling. They haven't explained this connection. They just say in the post-Dobbs world, look at 2022. All the polls now overstate Republican support. So I went back and looked, and I was like, that's kind of odd, because I don't remember that. So I went back and looked at the House races, Senate races, the generic ballot. In the generic ballot, the media, look at like-to-like polls. Don't get caught up in some, Republican-oriented pollster, independent pollster who happen to poll in one cycle. Don't look at averages, because averages include a lot of that. Instead, look at the same pollsters using the same modes and methods from the media and the universities, like Marist, like Suffolk, like Monmouth, like Quinnipiac, like NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, and Fox, like YouGov, like Morning Consult, that's been around now for multiple cycles. And what you will find is they overstated the Democratic generic ballot. In other words, who do you think you're going to vote for the House? Yep. By about 5 points in 2016. They overstated it by 5 points again in 2020. They overstated it by 5 points again, contrary to this conventional wisdom amongst the left, in 2022. Go back and look. Morning Consult. Democrats +3, Democrats +2, Democrats +4. Sometimes even higher. They had 5-7 point leads in the fall. Same with Ipsos. Same with YouGov. Same with a whole bunch. And then some of the ones that even got it right still understated the Republican edge. It was like even with an ABC poll, R+1. I think Fox was D+2, D+3.
Yep.
It was R-3, folks, on election day. And that was an honest R-3. Unlike, say, the D-8 from 2018, which was heavily fluffed by a bunch of districts where Republicans ran no candidates. There was about even in terms of uncompetitive races in 2022. So again, they're the same problem, the same error. And then now let's dig into the Senate races. And once again, there are a lot more new Republican pollsters, Republican-oriented pollsters, and that's what's moderating the data. Take them out, because what you want to look at—
Take them out. See what happens.
Look at Suffolk, look at Quinnipiac, look at Monmouth, look at Marist, look at Siena, look at the New York Times, look at ABC, CBS, CNN, look at Morning Consult, Ipsos, YouGov. What you look at these Senate races, look at the like time period, not when they heard it at the end to try to make themselves look good. Look at what they were doing 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 5 weeks out, 6 weeks out, etc. And what you will see is they generally, on average, I went back and looked, less than 10% of the Senate polls in the contested Senate races by Media University polls overstated the Republican margin. Instead, more than half overstated the Democratic margin.
Yep.
And most, but overstated the Democratic margin by the same overstating that they did in 2020 with Trump, and understating Trump. So this myth of 2022 that the polling got fixed, that the polling's now corrected, that abortion magically fixed it, that, fraudsters and grifters like Simon and others are out there spinning, it's complete hogwash. The Media University polls have not fixed the problem. They are still going to commit the same errors. And if you do like-to-like comparison, what's Rich's poll showing? 5-point improvement on Trump over the 2020 poll that he himself did. You're getting the same thing out of the New York Times data, out of the Siena data, out of the Marist and Quinnipiac and Monmouth data, out of the Suffolk data, out of the USA Today, ABC, CBS, CNN, Washington Post, all of them. You're getting 5-point. It almost doesn't matter where you're polling. It doesn't matter whether it's California, whether it's New York, whether it's New Jersey, whether it's Michigan, nationwide. And what would that predict? So they're predicting Harris +3. Assuming the same 5-point error rate when they were predicting Biden +8. What does that mean? It means Trump +2. And what does Michigan +3 look like? +4 looks like? It looks like Trump winning the popular vote is what it looks like. Or at least a dead even popular vote. And then if you have that, this is an early election night. Like some people were asking, well, Barnes, why can't they just scan the ballots all over again? One, you need registered voters to be able to pretend that you have the ballots to get in the first place. They don't, because they've been bleeding registered voters all the way through, because they bought their own nonsense that there were no bogus voters on those polls, which was amazing. They weren't concerned at all, because they're like, no, there were no stolen ballots. That's just some crazy right-wing conspiracy theory. Well, wait till election day when you discover what it looks like when you don't have those ballots. And then the second part is they were you got to have the ballots too, right? If you the ballots to scan in, you need to pretend somebody sent it in. That's what the point of mass mail-in voting is. You have those ballots sit there as a cushion to put it in the machine. Yep. They're not getting them. In some states, 80-90% decline. Even in states that have liberalized rules, Pennsylvania, 20, 30, 40% declines. And disproportionately Democratic everywhere. Everywhere, it's Democrats more that are falling off, and it fits your polling data. It's that older marginal Democratic voter who only turned out in 2020. Most likely, maybe they didn't even know they turned out in 2020. But, they ain't turning out this time, because they're making no meaningful effort to make sure they get that vote, because they think that voter is sincerely motivated, because they can't wait to vote for Kamala and the Party of Joy and go to the next Democratic event where they're all singing and dancing together. And they look like boomer liberals that are at a bad yoga get together. You know what I mean? They don't understand. They're not cool. They're not chic. They're not hip. All the rest. Now, the only thing that may save the Senate, now the House race, what may save the House, is if these voters vote down ballot the same way.
Right.
So if
it could happen.
Your Trump coattails effect, that marginal voter says, screw it, I'm just going to vote Republican all the way through because I don't like the Democrats, don't like what happens. There's been this other mythology out there that redistricting now favors Democrats. I dug into the numbers. No, it doesn't. Just look at Cook's PVI. The PVI still favors Republicans. There's in an even electorate, Republicans win the House. That's a Republican bias in the House vote. In both presidential elections, the Republicans not only exceeded expectation, but they generally ran slightly ahead of Trump. Now, it's an interesting question whether that will happen in the House vote again this time. But if it's an even national electorate and it's R+1, especially when you look at which districts, that you have about 36 Democratic congressmen in districts that Trump is likely to win or get close to winning, and that disproportionately Trump's going to bring out votes. And more than half of these were decided by the margin of error in 2022. So, and a bunch of them are in the Midwest. They're in the Sun Belt. They're in key parts of the South, but they're in some of these places that you're highlighting. Democrats are bleeding votes and bleeding turnout. You combine that, I could easily see Republicans adding to their House margin rather than what's currently predicted in the betting markets, which is that Democrats will take back the House. And the whole Democratic narrative is it's like, well, even if Trump somehow wins, doesn't matter. We're going to win the House, and maybe we can even hold on to the Senate. It's like,
yeah.
okay.
Let me also just add to that when it comes to 22, that some of that is a product of the realignment. Okay. There are higher educated voters, higher turnout voters, older voters, different groups that are higher propensity voters that vote in midterms, that do not vote in that do not vote in, excuse me, they do, but other ones that are more working class, that used to be Democratic voting groups, that as recently as Obama, that don't vote in midterms. They vote in presidential cycles sometimes, all right, depending on the candidate, but they do not show up for midterms, all right? That used to favor Republicans. 2010, 2014, you still saw it. In the era of Trump, all right, you could see in 2018 how some of that realignment began to hurt Republicans, all right? It's in midterm cycles. And the polls were modeling two things. One, that there would still be a more tilt, even among those educated voters, to the right, because right-wing voters have voted more in the past. Republicans are older. That just wasn't true. And then in 22, I think you saw the realization of the full realignment, where you saw more non-white voters who do typically vote for Republicans in certain isolated areas, like New York was unbelievably close, right? North Carolina and Florida had red waves. But then Democrats outmaneuvered them and outorganized them in where they needed to. In Nevada, right? In Georgia, they threw a wrench and stole it from Berry Lake, and period. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. They almost took out Ron Johnson because of dominant organization, not because of vote preference. And pollsters were modeling a little bit higher turnout. And that is why, because I'm telling you, I did the same thing. That's what happened to Oz. If Oz had a presidential turnout, he would have beaten Fetterman. Now, I wasn't modeling presidential, but I was modeling a very high turnout cycle in Pennsylvania. Not only did that not happen, it happened, and the turnout favored Democrats even more than it normally would have.
So note, the media university polls in Pennsylvania generally overstated Fetterman throughout the fall. I mean, they were having him up by 5, up by 6, up by 7.
Absolutely.
And now one other component here.
Marist.
We've been talking
Remember
about.
Marist? It was outrageous.
Oh, yeah. I mean, also, remember that there was some Democratic PAC that 538 was promoting as a high-quality poll?
Oh, yeah. What the hell was that?
It was like 10 points,
Bolton's
13
Democratic
points,
PAC.
17 points. I mean, they're predicting these massive Democratic blowouts. So all this mythology, there's a reason why Oz was an underdog in the betting markets until the very end. The other thing people forget in Pennsylvania is that was a mass early vote that saved Fetterman. That the late vote after the debate was breaking heavily towards Oz. That is what the so-called Republican-aligned pollsters, but the non-media, non-university pollsters were catching. And the hard part was figuring out who was going to turn out on election day compared to who had already voted. Here's an interesting tidbit. This is a sign that Fetterman, Shapiro, as well as Whitmer in Michigan, are doing nothing to help Harris.
They wanted to lose.
Right now, 2024, Republicans are outperforming 2022. Democrats are underperforming 2022 in mail-in voting in Pennsylvania by share of the vote, and in some cases, volume. That means Fetterman's machine is not organized on behalf of Harris. That means Shapiro's doing nothing to really help Harris behind the scenes. And similar dynamics and just very preliminary data, but so far out of Michigan. And ask yourself, does Whitmer do this promotion, making fun, mocking Catholicism on behalf of Harris without knowing how people would respond to that kind of thing? It's
a good point.
It won't make a big dent on her right now because she can come back in 4 years. It's marginal, but it does negative news for Catholics in Michigan related to Harris. But you look at. So the polling data still overstated Democrats in 2022. That's all myth. and this abortion myth. I mean, Democrats won because younger working class or low propensity, not always younger, low propensity working class Trump votes, Trump only voters didn't come out in 2022 after people thought they might, and they are coming out in 2024.
Yeah.
But in key swing districts where also Democrats tactically outmaneuvered Republican candidates.
Yeah,
But
right.
remember, it was an R-3 electorate. Typically, an R-3 electorate, they would have had 10, 15 more House seats. That all these close House seats, these almost 40 House seats that are close districts that stay Democrat, that normally would go Republican in R-3 electorate, all disproportionately have big working class vote shares that are Trump oriented, Trump only voters. They are turning out in 2024. So I wouldn't be betting Democrat for the House just because of how that may translate. And I went back and looked, to your point. In the Trump era, there have been 14 competitive Senate races. 13 of the 14 ended up voting the same way as they voted for the White House. 13 of the 14. Only Collins in Maine over won a state that the other party won for the White House. Even in very close races, whether it was Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, didn't matter where it was, the vote ended. And then the other thing was, about 80% of the time, the Senate candidate race was within 2 points of the presidential race. So, and usually your exceptions where one candidate had absolutely no money, even in some of those races, like a New York or New Jersey.
Yeah, you're talking about
it was startling how
being outspent by disgusting that he didn't even have enough money to go up in the major media markets go up on air in the major media markets in Pennsylvania. He wasn't in the tri-state area. He wasn't in Allegheny. He just absolutely got eviscerated. The guy raised like $3 million, folks. Shapiro
the other thing is, they got to get rid of Mitch McConnell being in any position of control. Here's a guy who's not even funding Ted Cruz.
He's got to go. He's got to go.
The Republicans are the ones starving Kerry Lake of cash in Arizona, starving Sam Brown of cash in Nevada, while they're giving cash to Mike Rogers in Michigan, who's probably the most marginal of all of them. Now, I think the Democrats are still vulnerable because pretty much every Senate candidate running this time is weaker. Like even take Kelly against McSally in 2020. That's a guy that's a much more popular natural candidate. McSally is much weaker than Lake. Looked like she was going to run way behind Trump. Ended up running almost even with Trump.
Almost even.
So
yeah.
within so I think here's my hypothesis.
It's true.
I think that in 3 out of 4 Senate races, wherever Trump wins by a 2.5 or more, he'll carry the Republican candidate along with him for the Senate. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think that every state's a little bit different, but like he wins Arizona by like 3 or more, she's going to get real close. He wins it by 5, she's going to get in. All right, they're just going to be wrong. Now people are going to go, Rich, the polls, and I'm going to just reflect. I'm just going to point back to what Robert just said, which is we've been here before. We have been here before. There are these voters that come out, and McSally Robert, do you remember the independent moderate male in Arizona? You and I had gone over them like crazy. Mark Kelly and McSally were running basically even. There were a lot more undecideds, but they were running basically even. And Trump was stomping Biden with these voters by 30 points. At the end of the day, most of them did vote for McSally. They were just picking
a bunch of working class Hispanics. Remember that? Because it was like a certain demographic that didn't trust the Republican brand. But once they went in to vote,
they saw
they were going to vote.
They remembered Mark Kelly's name. And they're like, oh, it's Mark Kelly. And so when you're doing a poll, they're like, oh, it's Mark Kelly. And then when they pick up their ballot and they're like, oh, voting for Trump. And then they look down ballot and say, oh, that's the Republican. They do it. Like that happens. And let me just show you this too, real quick, the union vote, because I know it's 3:44 already, man. Sometimes I got to tell you on Inside the Numbers, the time does not fly by like this because you're talking by yourself. You know what I mean? When it's somebody else, especially with you here, like the time just flies by, dude. All right. This is the union vote. And just to give people an idea, this is union households in Michigan. 21% said they were union households in Michigan in 2020. And Joe Biden won them 62 to 37. All right. Hillary Clinton won them as well in 2016. She just did not win them by that margin. And then among those who were not union households, 79%, Trump won them by a much, much smaller 51% to 48%. Now, all right, we are seeing almost no change in the non-union households, a very slight change in the non-union households. We're looking at percentages that are almost identical as a share of the overall electorate that we saw in 2020, although there is a slight uptick in the union vote. And shocker, shocker, Trump has closed the union vote. Far more movement among union households than anything else. And we'll couple that, Robert, with where we said by region, the biggest movement happened. The biggest movement happened in heavily unionized southeastern Michigan, even in Wayne County. And we just did not see this last cycle, guys. We didn't. All right. So, yes, while Kamala Harris is still winning the union vote, she's winning it by what appears to be potentially less than what Hillary won it by. All right.
Well,
it is just that way. Oh,
yeah.
and
When
you scroll down, when you scroll down, it gets even worse for her. So when you throw the third party in there, guys, it gets even worse. And that will be the case. There will be third party candidates on the ballot. So you're going to have some union people throw their vote away that should otherwise be Harris votes. If you had no other choice, they would choose Harris. By the way, look at the difference in the margin between the head to head and the third party full scenario ballot, Robert. I mean, Trump is barely eking. He's eking out like a 1-point lead in the head to head with nobody else on the ballot, but with other candidates on the ballot, we asked about.
Wow, it's up to 4.
Yeah, dude. I mean, yeah. I mean,
I think he's well, remember we predicted that once Kennedy was out and endorsed Trump and was campaigning for him, that the vestigial vote left for people like him on the ballot, the Democrats decided to put him back on the ballot, were going to come from Harris's votes.
Yeah.
Because the only people at that point that weren't voting Trump after Kennedy was screaming, vote Trump, are people who were never going to vote.
Who were never going to vote for him anyway. Yes.
And now, but they just don't like Harris. And the almighty genius of the Democrats gave him an option. Well, you don't have to vote for Harris. You can still vote for Kennedy and screw us as the Democratic Party because we're too dumb to know who we should keep on and off the ballot in our effort to protect democracy. I mean, you're looking at it's all subgroups.
49.2
moving with is upscale voters and some older Black Democratic women voters. They're always going to come back home. I mean, and some older women boomer type Democrat. I mean, I know some of them. I don't think they're watching. Me too. And God bless them. They like Harris. It's okay. Okay, understood. But that was going to be it. She had a low ceiling. She always had a low ceiling. And they just thought Biden had a worse floor. I'm not convinced he did. I think Biden had a better floor than Harris does. This could completely fall in. Saturday Night Live is now making fun of her routinely. I mean, which is something they haven't done now for 8 years, is mock a Democrat. Since like Hillary early on, they were willing to mock. But remember, they had Hillary on. I mean, they weren't willing. They're just making fun of her as sort of dumb and whimsical on a daily basis. That's embarrassing. Humiliating. I mean, I'm just waiting for them to start, making fun of her husband for slapping women around, knocking women up.
Let me ask you: are they going to turn on her soon? Because this week, I think the next time you see a round of Emerson polls, it's going to look really, really bad. We now have the Harvard Harris. We get the Pew Research was only +1. NBC News is now even. I haven't had a chance. And we found the same thing. I just didn't get a chance to put out her favorability yet. We haven't had a chance to look at it, but you will see a complete collapse in her favorability numbers. Let me do a half.
It was fake. It was what we said from
the get-go. Fake. It was totally.
The only thing I underestimated was Democratic self-delusion. I didn't realize they'd convinced themselves that 2020 was an honest election based on honest turnout. I didn't realize they thought that diversity, equity, and inclusion was the problem to their candidate lack of success in working class minorities and millennium communities. I underestimated their ineptitude. That's literally because everything we talked about is somebody sensible would have stuck with Biden. He had a higher floor because there are older blue collar voters in the Midwest that liked him. He had been president, so there was less of an X factor, less of a random factor, and they thought, oh well, we'll just create this fake Kamala Harris. It's not real, and it will last. It wasn't going to last for the presidency. I mean, the mask would come off at some point, and of course, it's come off. And unless he could change the fundamentals, unless he could make the economy magically better, unless immigration would end tomorrow, unless we got world peace in Europe and Middle East, none of which was going to happen Biden was going to help make sure that didn't happen. But to remind everybody that only Barack Obama, couldn't beat Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton couldn't beat Donald Trump, as even Newt Gingrich was letting out of the bag. And Kamala Harris couldn't beat. Only the great Joe Biden, the legend Scranton Joe, could beat the mighty Donald J. Trump. And they should have they should have left him on the ballot.
They should have just left him alone. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Like, like me, you've been around a while, man. I mean, you know what happens when a Democrat starts to hurt and they look like they're going to lose. They throw a whole bunch of shit against the wall. The media starts turning on them, and that's what happened this weekend. In case you guys didn't see it, he didn't even do a 60 Minutes interview. All right. Like, every loser I can possibly think of, every loser has started to sound the alarms that Kamala Harris is sounding. He won't debate me anymore. He won't sit for 60 minutes. I mean, this is the stuff of a loser campaign, and they know it. Bottom line. So, I mean, do you think the media turns on her, man, if by the end of this week, something doesn't change? I think on the Sunday shows this weekend, we're going to hear what you said before. I think it's time we start thinking about saving the House, thinking about the House majority. I think it's time that we think about the Senate. These are code words, folks, for we're abandoning the nominee. Like when they are leaking to the media their internal polling because it's so bad, she's killing them. All right. And her team is trying to say, we're not down, we're even, we're just not making any ground, and we're going to change things up. We're going to shake it up here. Waltz is off the trail. We're doing more media with her. Well, that media blitz happened and it hurt her. Now her favorabilities are creamed again. By the time the election comes around, Trump's favorability is going to be more than hers in that NBC poll if they poll again. Or was that their final poll? That may have been their final. Harvard-Harris, they put out their final. It's Harris +1. Harvard-Harris understated Trump support by 6 points in 2020. So, I mean, do you think they're going to start turning on her? Because we have seen this in the past. They turned on Dukakis. Bad. They turned on John Kerry. They turned on Hillary Clinton. They did. At the very last week, they turned on her. It took till the last week, but they did it.
I think you're going to have a split. You have the sharper crowd within the Democratic political universe, the crowd that's leaking to Mark Halperin, who believes
they are.
I mean, the reason why a lot of those Senate candidates are doing that is because they don't want to get blamed when their Senate candidate goes down by surprise. So they're oh man, it's all Harris. Harris is so bad, and she's just sinking the ticket, and we're just trying to salvage everything. That's why CIA Slutkin is out there saying that on interviews. That's why every other Senate campaign
underwater.
Yeah, exactly. They got Halperin on speed dial. Don't blame us when this goes south. Yep. But then there's the other half that are this naive, delusional type that is this on social media, that's big within the Democratic organizational universe, that still has a lot of weight in large parts of the Democratic media because Democratic media is so young. So I think like you see people like Matt Stoller comes from the Democratic left on the antitrust side. You see people like Cenk Uygur of Young Turks.
Yeah.
All complaining. They're like, you keep telling us, look at how, I mean, I was
Carville.
Ads
down and cursed at everybody, dude. On that call, Jim Carville was like, you're all a bunch of morons. You're going to lose. This campaign's going to lose. And you're going to take everybody with you. That's what he was doing.
He's blaming everybody. He's making random attacks on Jonathan Turley now. I think he's calling him Turley or something. And he's now attacking Alan Dershowitz. He is so bitter. And he's been so whiny and complaining ever since he moved to the Garden District. God bless him. He's got to move to a different part of Louisiana. But when he was in North Louisiana, and chasing high schoolers, he was a little bit more sensible. But but I think if than he is with the Garden District and having international clientele contracts. But he's been recognized. Young black men, they've been bleeding. Working class young men, they've been bleeding. They just never accepted and appreciated why. But the question is, so half of the Democrats are clearly delusional. Like you follow like the Drudge Report, which is now no longer Drudge. It's other people that run it. Drudge just can't say it because that was the condition of the sale. Like that's your media lead in each day. They're convinced, Trump is in trouble and he's getting crushed. And you got like Puck News out there saying, oh, everybody's scared at Mar-a-Lago about how it's all falling apart. So you have some of that narrative, and I've been trying to figure out how much of it is hopium and copium, and how much of it is, reasonable and intelligible, and how much of it do they actually believe, or so they're just trying to BS their own crowd into donating a little bit more money, giving one more check, one more contribution, one more volunteer support, one more get out the vote operation, one more phone calling. Half of them clearly really believe it. They're like Hillary's core crew. That when people like Halpern was doing the Showtime, the circus behind the scenes, I knew my bet was likely to win against Hillary when I saw who Hillary's campaign team was really made up of. There were no Carvils in that room. It's all a bunch of Brooklyn soy boys, and those people really exist. I've been to Brooklyn. That I don't know how they're like spaghetti for arms. I don't know where these people, I don't know what they're eating or drinking, whatever. It's unbelievable. But so I think that's the question to me. I think the sophisticated crowd knows now within a week that this is over, and they'll shift to the House and the Senate. Yeah. The unsophisticated crowd, I think, believes they're going to have a clean sweep on election day, and you're going to have some real mental breakdowns on the Democratic side on election night.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really, what you just said is a really wise take on it. That's, I think, what's going to happen here. Another week from now, the smart ones are going to realize that she's in real, real trouble. This is like, I was being very cautious last week, but I was like, I got to wait. I got to stay because I got to see if what I think is happening is happening. And by the way, I mean, we didn't even go over income. I mean, there's so many groups to go over here. She's only winning under 30,000 by freaking 52.49, really, when rounded 51.5 to 48.5. When you actually had the third party, someone else, Trump is winning them 46.9 to 45.9 because so many of those Kennedy voters are going, nah, and throwing their vote away. The ones that are voting for a two-party vote share are actually voting for Trump. Of course, he's losing the 30 to 50, but not as much as he did. 50 to 100, he's the core of Democrats. I mean, oh God, the core of Trump's coalition, he's crushing. And then look at the 100 to 200,000. That's the return of the 100,000 to 200,000 voting group that he lost from 16 to 20. These are people who, they pull up their bootstraps every day and they go to work and they work hard and they really were the seasick voter, key to the seasick voter thesis, folks, that we laid out in 2020. Now, oh, by the way, they went for Biden 52 to 47. Yeah, 52 to 47. Now, look, they're back to Trump and they're back to Trump with a vengeance. And I just don't see how she wins with these numbers. I mean, yeah, it could be close. I mean, I would say that it's probably wise to expect a close race. I just don't know how you overcome all of this. And the truth is, it's much more likely that Trump just breaks away big at the end. And like Robert says, blows her out 4 points in some of these states, blows her out. So they're going to count the election day vote in a state like Pennsylvania first. I mean, the early vote first. If Trump is anywhere near above 22%, he's going to crush her. I mean, that's it, because there's not the pool of late arriving ballots anymore that, I mean, there will be them, don't get me wrong, but there's not the large
numbers.
They need the numbers, and they're not
there. They're not on the voter rolls, and they're not on in the first place to even request the ballot. And then with 3 reasons. One, they're not on the voter rolls. Second, most of these states no longer have liberalized send a ballot to everybody and their brother and their mother laws. So the person has to actually request the ballot. Those requests are substantially down. And third, the return rate is substantially down. That you can't have ballots sitting in a bag ready to add to the equation if those ballots aren't in the bag. Yeah. In order to harvest ballots, you need ballots to harvest. So Democrats have nowhere near the number. And I realize now the reason why they thought those were all honest ballots. They think all of those ballots they could get by just early voting and turnout. That's what the core Harris people think. So that's why I think Harris's people stay delusional. They'll stay, the country will come home. Guess what? They're running an ad here in Nevada. I had to watch it twice. I was like, they're running this ad. It was like Hillary on steroids. It was the Cheneys. It was long Liz Cheney talking. And it was Liz Cheney, the CIA, the many high-ranking generals. I was like, it basically just say the deep state hereby fully endorses Kamala Harris for president. It was like, even if I'd been politically asleep for the last 10 years and I woke up and saw that ad, I'd be like, there's no way I'm voting for that chick. I mean, he's like, the deep state. I mean, Hillary did a little bit of this, not to the. They're putting money behind this in Nevada, a working class populist area. This isn't some general oriented area. This isn't
We
some
didn't
big
even get
military oriented area. And it's like the CIA loves her, the military loves her, the national security establishment loves her, the warmongers love her, the war whores love her. You know, I mean,
we didn't even get a chance, Robert, to talk about Nevada and the culinary unions coming out and saying the polls are wrong. He's going to win this state. Like every time the culinary unions say something, folks, you better listen. In 2010, they said Harry Reid is going to win. Those polls are wrong. Sharon Engel's a clown, and we're not electing Sharon Engel. That not only did Harry Reid win, it was a 10-point polling miss. He won by 5 points. It was easy. In 2016, they said it's going to be close, but Hillary's going to eke it out. Then in 2020, they said they got Biden's back. This time they said Donald Trump is going to win. The Las Vegas Journal-Review again endorsed him. Like we didn't even get a chance to go there. But Kimmy Hunt said, because I know I got to go in a couple of minutes here. How's Bernie look? I never heard that race mentioned. Is it because he's looking pretty good? Dems are smothering the airwaves. There are polls that are all over the place. I don't see how Bernie Moreno does not carry the state of Ohio. We've been here again over and over. He performed the worst he's ever performed in the primary, folks, in 2024. And Bernie, he slapped it. Bernie got more votes than Brown got in a contested primary. I mean, the polls are bullshit in Ohio. Pardon my French. They don't know what they're doing. I remember when JD was running and he messages me and he's like, what the hell is going on? Like, you know, he's like, our numbers look better, but like, what the hell is going on? And I said, you know what, JD, I'm going to poll it. I want to know myself because usually they can't poll this state. I laid out 3 scenarios for him. I said it's going to be a 2018 electorate and Tim Ryan's going to get closer, but you're going to win by anywhere, 2 to 4 points. Here's what it looks like, etc. It's going to be closer to a 2020 electorate and you're going to win in a blowout. But here's the most likely that this likely voter model is correct. And you're looking at like a 6-point win. And he's like, but USA Today has us tied, and I'm like, you're going to win by about 6 points. And what did he win by? Just over 6 points. So, there's no way Trump wins Ohio by 10 points and Bernie Moreno holds on. It's not a governor's race. It's a Senate race.
Sheldon Brown holds on, yeah.
Yeah, Sherrod Brown, excuse me.
There aren't 20% of the electorate of Ohio that's going to split vote for Sheldon Brown and Trump. That's just not happening. So yeah, I mean, my view is the Senate. I like all the odds on the Republicans just because they're being understated currently due to the coattails effect of Trump, which can be very long. I like Republican odds for the House. My favorite bet of all of them would be Moreno to win. You can get him at even money in Ohio. He should be a major favorite. And then last but not least, the prediction of my modification projection currently,
which is a question, by the way, any changes? Yeah, I'll get to you in a second, buddy. Go ahead.
So I just have a little bit lower turnout. White voters, white non-Hispanic voters, 105 million turnout, about 70% of the electorate, maybe a little bit higher than that. Trump wins them by 15. Amongst black voters, I think somewhere between 17 and 18 million, with about 11 to 12% of the electorate. The Harris only wins them by a 60-point margin, which is a dramatic decline from 2020. Hispanics, 17 to 18 million, might outvote black voters. We'll see in terms of vote share. Similar 11 to 12% of the electorate. I think, I have Harris winning them by 15, and there's been a lot of data going in that same direction. If anything, I might end up on the high side of the equation. At least in some states, definitely will be. I mean, 25 point decline amongst Mexican American voters in California.
Dude, that goes to what Good Logic, our buddy Joe over there from Good Logic, just said. He said, because there's no independent review of election fraud anymore, he thinks the Republicans will win California before they win Michigan again. And Joe, this is the thing, like, don't fall into this trap, dude. With everything going their way and nobody looking and all of these efforts to stack the ballot box, which is what they did, they still can only get them a little over 2 points in 2020. There's no infinite universe where Democrats can just keep stuff in the box. We do have a way to track what is sent out for absentee ballots and what is requested and what is submitted. They can't just keep going forever. There's a finite universe. And also what I'm basically saying is there are too many voters that have changed their minds, and there's too many of them. Now, they got to vote, and that's the bottom. That's what it comes down to. You got to get them to the polls. But it's like there becomes a point where it's too big to rig, which Trump got directly from my mouth. Too big to rig. All right. So that is real. The too big to rig idea is real. And, I think that even in Pennsylvania with the loss of the date thing, Robert, the inability to count votes. By the way, if you want to know whether Shapiro wants Harris to win or not, look at how the state Supreme Court, which is liberal as hell, Republicans never win election contests in the state Supreme Court. All of a sudden, they agree with the Republican Party. You don't think Josh Shapiro had a hand in that? You don't think Josh Shapiro made sure that friggin' ruling came down the way he wanted it to come down so he could be president and she doesn't and she can't? I mean, come on, folks. I mean, this is how the world works. I'm sorry to let you all, I'm sorry to drag you all out of your fantasy land where judges in black robes have ethics and honor and integrity, but that's bullshit. All right. The governor picks up the phone and says, "Oh, your life over so bad. You're going to do, you're going to do this. You're going to rule for Republicans. She ain't stealing my state. Nah, I need a reason to run against her and that wing of the party. And they wouldn't pick me because I'm a Jew. So I'm going to screw them bad." And everybody knows it. All right. It isn't look, he has an ally cut a thing for him and an ad about we're so happy she picked Josh Shapiro. She humiliated him. She humiliated him because her party is filled with a bunch of anti-Semites and she gave up on Pennsylvania to win the state of Michigan, which guess what? Is not looking great for her. So, I mean, can she win Michigan? Of course. Could it be close? Of course. I'm just telling you, these numbers look grossly inadequate for her to. She's underperforming Hillary Clinton. Are you understand what I'm saying? And where is it? It's not in the white vote, folks. It's not there. It's not there. And I know I got to go out of here soon, so let's speed run some of them. But damn, it's just not. She's doing awful. And by the way, it's even worse when you look at the third party, Robert. It's even worse. And just so people understand how it went, Trump is now winning whites by almost 15 points. He only won whites by 9 points in Michigan in 2020. So, that's a friggin' blowout. 13 there, 13 with leaners there. But when you do that to head, it's a little bit more. So, somewhere in the line. Either way, more than when he won whites by in 2020, which was about 10, actually. Sorry, not 9, 10.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I have him winning the white vote by about 15 points. My ultimate, losing Hispanics by about 15, losing black votes by about 60%, losing Asian and others by about 20% or so. Though I noticed some polling data that shows Asian voters trending the same way as Hispanics and black voters.
Yeah, they're still going for Harris in this poll, but Hispanics are actually going for Trump. And it's a small subgroup, but I will mark my words, folks. If you look at the exit polls, Trump damn near won Hispanics in Michigan in 2020. Go look. It's very close.
It's a very working class industrial Mexican American vote.
Yeah.
And it's similar in the Hispanic vote that exists in Michigan is similar to the one that exists in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Predominantly Mexican American.
Even more so Republican. Even more, more Trumpy.
Trending that way. Trumpy, yes.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I have 149 million people voting currently. So a slight adjustment downward just based on where turnout is trending so far. Trump winning 75 million votes. Harris winning 72 million votes. Third, other parties drop off votes about 2 million to 3 million. And so still Trump 50, Harris 48 is still my prediction is that Trump wins by 1 to 2 points. And all the data that since I put this out, 2 months ago has trended in that direction. So the only thing it's really modified is it looks like turnout might be a little bit weaker than even a thought initially.
I think some pollsters are copping out, Robert, because they don't want to get to where you are. So the Harvard-Harris poll had moved all the way to a Harris +5. Now it's down to Harris +1. Pew Research dropped last week, a Harris +1. They polled early, folks, because they did not want to have to drop a Trump +1. They are hedging their bets. And then they can say, if he does win the popular vote, they can say, well, look, that's when we polled. It's a snapshot in time, and we were still within the margin. They're hedging their bets. They're playing a very cute game here. And it's like in these battleground states and Pennsylvania to come, folks, you're going to see. Oh, and we got Florida. I'm just going to blow it open. I just haven't had a chance to process it. Trump plus 11. 11. So winning Miami-Dade.
So Nate Silver's going to lose his Trump can't win it by 8 or more vote. I bet. His only bet he's ever placed on an election.
Unbelievable. What a shocker. Remember when he flipped out over our Trump, when we released the Trump plus 3, he flipped out and he was like, oh, it's never going to happen. And then when the election came, I'm like, bro, look at this turnout. It's not looking good. And he's like, I'm not entertaining this shit. I'm going to walk Fifi, my poodle. And we were like, all right, man, go have a nice little walk with your Fifi poodle, you fucking loser. You know, and he came back to a Trump plus 3.4. You idiot. And then I gave him a big FU emoji. Go yourself, you loser. Anyway, yeah, I guess I would love to have a chance to go blaze through all of these, but the Waltz pedo scandal, any effect? I mean, look, people not going to believe that 100%, but they will think it reaffirms their like they don't like.
Well, he's a guy that's LARPing as a working class Midwestern man.
So
it's obvious he's not a real one, and he's the one you don't leave your kids to babysit with. He puts the coach in Coach Sandusky.
Yep. Oh man. Woo. Why are all the polls showing a disparity between Republicans and Trump? Does this mean the Republican brand is just damaged? We went over that, I think, really good detail. Is the one, what do you think? Cruz only up in that internal by 1? That's what
Cruz is going to cruise in Texas. It's not going to.
Yeah, that's what Robert was referring to. Some of these Terrence Group, Signal. I'm sorry, I don't mean to call out people by names, but they got these like handshake contracts with the NRSC and NRCC, and every year we got to deal with their bullshit polling. I had to basically pull Ken Paxton off from the cliff in 22 because they were showing him basically up by like 2 points, I think it was, or maybe 3 or something. And he's like, I got to spend more money in these final days. And I'm like, Ken, that's bullshit. They're trying to line their pockets. Look, and I gave him a Paxton plus 9. Guess what Ken Paxton won by? 9 points. All right. So, and they're just full of shit. I'm sorry. And the bookies, what do you make a predict in the bookies real quick before we go? Because I do have to go.
Yeah. So for those that are interested out there, there's now new markets. So Kalshi now has KLSHI now has big markets on U.S. elections because they won their case in federal court against the Biden administration. Interactive Brokers, which has been a big place for a while, they're now putting up election markets, prediction markets, betting markets. So those are available as well. Bet Online still has theirs, but there's more UK bookies and offshore books. Bet US now has a bunch of markets. You can bet on the margin of victory in Senate races.
That's what Blue Demon's asking you about. The Electoral College says UK bookies have Trump over 300 electoral votes at plus 400 and Republicans over 30 plus states at plus 250. Would you
the plus 400 is the best bet. I have his median electoral college vote at 312. I could see him getting to 319 or more and winning by 100 electoral votes if he can, get a surprise swing out of either some combination of Maine and New Hampshire or Virginia or New Mexico or Minnesota. And it wouldn't surprise me if he flips something, and he might flip them all. I mean, all those are close. That if things trend, if everything just cascades in the last week or so, then all of a sudden you could see all those places flip.
It's looking very, very like this feels like an early version of 16 to me, folks. That's really what it feels like. I got to be honest with you. That's what it feels like.
Except an easier, bigger win. I mean, I think it's going to feel
because of the census too. I mean, alone
like 2012, 2004, where everybody thought it was going to be tight, and then it was over by 11 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what goes to this. It'll be the last one. And then I got a boogie. I love the show. What are the odds of machine fraud? They're going to be fraud. I mean, it's just a matter of how much it's going to be and how much will it impact. Right now, she's got a problem. I mean, her machine is not running the way the Biden machine ran. Everyone knows it. There are just people who are not willing to do for her what they were willing to do for Biden. And the anti-Trump hate has moderated so much. I would say this. Those who hated him that are on the left, hate hasn't moderated at all, but the number of people, the percentage of people that hate him that much has declined significantly. That's why we don't have double haters the way we did in 16, and even we don't have double haters to the extent we had them a year ago. I mean, we just don't. Folks, I just got to say real quick before I pass it to Robert for his pitch, but look, the Public Polling Project, we're coming down to the wire here. Fund it as much as you can. I don't even know what I got up there. Do I have the last poll for national polling? Let me see. It's under. No, it's not. Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate it. Just do me a favor. I wish I should have done this before, Robert, but I'll put the new forms up there because we always poll in the rears. I'll put the new forms up there and do what you can, share far and wide, contribute what you can, and let's take this thing to the end so we can have finals. Just that we are running very low on time to be able to get it funded and then out in the field. Because once the election's over, Robert, polling in the rears is going to pull me in the rears because no one's going to fund it. Once it's a done deal and it's over and done with, even, despite the outcome, people aren't going to want to do it. So I'll actually even send Robert a link. Hopefully he can tweet it out or something like that. And we'll go once I get the new one up. All right. So we had the post Labor Day one that was done. I think, let me just double check that. It's not even fully funded. You could fund it still. It's up there. But I'll put in like finals. I'll just put finals with one last campaign. We'll just call it finals and we'll see what we can raise and then pull what we can based on that. All right. Sound good? All right. Robert, where can people follow you, brother?
Yeah. So if you want, we put up our predictions and betting recommendations, in terms of bet share, bet market, bet location, bet amount, what you bet up to, where you should bet it at. For all the markets, there's there's Kalshi, there's Interactive Brokers, there's Predictit, there's Polymarket, there's Bet Online, there's Bet US. They're all over the place these days, and there's stock market bets you can make related to this. There's a Harris related bucket of stocks. There's a Trump related bucket of stocks. You can even invest in it that way. But we put all of that up at sportspicks.locals.com. That's where you can get all of that insight, intel, and information. We also have put up recommendations on college football, pro football, European football, basketball, baseball, all of that too. But we'll have a bunch of political bets up and posted all the way up until election season. Everything's trending in our direction. If you got the bet a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, you're already plus money. But I think it's gonna be a very profitable betting election cycle because the Nate Silvers of the world have just enough influence to sucker just enough saps to put just enough cash into these markets that you can rob them blind and do very, very well on election night monetarily as well as politically.
All right, brother. I'll see you back here next week. Everybody, don't forget, if you like the videos, like them, share them far and wide, subscribe to everybody. Robert, all the links, everything is in the description, including the sponsors of this program. So, all right, all the best, Robert. I will see you later, my friend. He bounced. All right, awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to kick it out with some music here. All right. And like I said, everything's in the description. Nothing but love for you, and we'll see you real soon. All right. Oh, you want to go see something? Go to Gorka. I'll see you over there. I got a million things going on right here. Whoops.